The revelations I'm about to share will dismantle your understanding of Object 3I Atlas and the true events unfolding within our solar system. While global discourse centers on its classification as a comet or something else entirely, leaked documents and classified observations paint a drastically different picture, one that authorities are actively suppressing. The coronal mass ejection impacted 3I Atlas mere days ago. What transpired next defies all established laws of physics. Instead of succumbing to destruction or being repelled, the object absorbed the colossal energy of 1 trillion atomic bombs, transforming it into structured signals directed precisely at Earth. The quadrupling of its brightness was no accident. It was a deliberate, controlled event, impossible for any celestial body to orchestrate. Yet, this is merely the prelude. New calculations, derived from trajectory data collected by 227 observatories across the globe, indicate that 3I Atlas possesses a mass of at least 33 billion tons, rendering it denser than the material of a neutron star. Astonishingly, it is simultaneously concealing its gravitational signature. The mathematics are irrefutable, revealing a phenomenon that challenges our fundamental comprehension of matter, energy, and the boundaries of technological capability. Here's the information they're withholding from you. The 20 scientists who publicly voiced their concerns represent only a fraction of a larger group. Dozens more researchers have been coerced into silence, their funding jeopardized, and their careers threatened for daring to ask inconvenient questions. Meanwhile, deep space surveillance networks, originally designed for military purposes, have detected structured emissions emanating from 3I Atlas that bear no resemblance to any known natural occurrence. The window of opportunity for whatever 3I Atlas is orchestrating is closing within weeks, not months. The December deadline is not conjecture. It's a mathematical certainty based on orbital mechanics and the most sophisticated mission planning ever documented. Whether this signifies humanity's first encounter with extraterrestrial intelligence or something far more sinister, the evidence strongly suggests that we are on the precipice of discovering we have never been alone in the cosmos. Before we embark on this profound exploration together, please engage the like button and subscribe to remain updated on this developing narrative. Share in the comments where you're joining us from, the current time and your location, and the most peculiar experience you've ever encountered. Chapter 1. The 20 Scientists' Groundbreaking Revelation. On September 19, 2025, an unprecedented event occurred, poised to shatter the comfortable equilibrium of the astronomical community. A research paper surfaced online, bearing the signatures of 20 scientists affiliated with institutions spanning 3 continents. Its conclusions were so earth-shattering that within hours, careers were imperiled, funding was scrutinized, and the entire scientific establishment mobilized to contain what they perceived as a dangerous breach of established protocols. The paper's title, while seemingly innocuous, belied its profound implications: Statistical Analysis of Trajectory Anomalies in Interstellar Object 3I Atlas. However, embedded within its complex mathematical formulations and carefully crafted academic prose lay a conclusion that would trouble astronomers for weeks on end. These 20 researchers had placed their professional standing on the line, asserting a single, alarming claim. 3I Atlas was exhibiting behavior inconsistent with any natural celestial body. Dr. Eliana Vasquez, a leading specialist in planetary dynamics at the European Southern Observatory, served as the principal author. Her qualifications were impeccable, her methodology beyond reproach, and her conclusion utterly devastating to conventional explanations. In leaked correspondence later unearthed through academic freedom of information requests, she confided in a colleague, "The trajectory data is keeping me awake at night. We're observing precision navigation that would make our most accomplished spacecraft engineers envious. This is not random. This is not natural. And we must begin addressing the deeply uncomfortable implications of this reality." The paper's core argument rested on statistical analyses so rigorous that even staunch skeptics found it difficult to identify any flaws. When 3I Atlas was initially detected hurtling through space at a velocity approaching 200,000 kilometers per hour, its trajectory appeared unremarkable, beyond its obvious interstellar origin. It seemed to be merely another cosmic wanderer, expelled from a distant star system and adrift in the void for eons. However, as more observatories meticulously tracked its progress, a perplexing pattern emerged. The object was not simply traversing our solar system. It was approaching 3 of our major planets, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, with what the researchers termed impossible precision. The statistical probability of such alignments occurring through random chance was less than 1 in 5,000. Dr. James Chun, an expert in astronavigation at MIT who provided critical computational analysis for the study, struggled to find terrestrial parallels for their observations. He explained to colleagues in private conversations that were subsequently leaked, "Imagine being in New York and throwing a dart that lands perfectly in the bullseye in London. Then imagine that same dart, through a series of improbable ricochets, hitting bullseyes in Paris and Rome with flawless accuracy." That's essentially what we're witnessing with 3I Atlas. Except the distances involved are measured in hundreds of millions of kilometers. The mathematical exactitude was the source of the paper's profound impact. These were not vague estimations or subjective interpretations. The trajectory data was concrete, verifiable, and accessible to any institution possessing the necessary computational power for analysis. The 20 scientists had simply performed the calculations that others had shied away from. Each planetary encounter was timed with an almost mechanical regularity. 3I Atlas was slated to pass Venus at a distance of 0.2 astronomical units on October 15th. Mars was scheduled for a closer examination on October 3rd, with the object approaching to within 0.19 astronomical units. Jupiter, the solar system's colossal planet, was to be observed from a distance of 0.36 astronomical units on March 16th of the following year. Yet, it wasn't solely the precision that unsettled the researchers, it was the remarkable efficiency. If 3I Atlas had been engineered by human minds to survey the solar system's primary bodies, its plotted course could not have been more elegantly designed. The object's trajectory facilitated the maximum acquisition of data from each planet while expending the absolute minimum energy for course adjustments. Dr. Maria Santos, a mission planning specialist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory who, though not an official member of the research team, had independently reviewed the calculations, found herself compelled to consider possibilities that challenged her established worldview. She confided in trusted colleagues, "We dedicate years to planning spacecraft trajectories for achieving far simpler objectives. What we're observing here suggests a level of mission planning that points either to extraordinary luck or deliberate intent." The paper meticulously detailed every facet of the trajectory analysis. Page after page was filled with orbital mechanics computations, each equation contributing to the inescapable conclusion that 3I Atlas was following a path optimized for scientific return while minimizing the risk of detection. It bore the unmistakable imprint of intelligent mission planning. However, perhaps the most unsettling aspect was the object's approach vector. Unlike typical interstellar visitors that enter the solar system from arbitrary directions, 3I Atlas had arrived from the direction of Sagittarius, directly towards the galactic center, where the density of background stars would have made early detection exceedingly difficult. It was as if the object had been intentionally concealed until the very last moment. The timing of its discovery was equally suspicious. 3I Atlas was spotted only upon reaching Jupiter's orbit, affording humanity a mere handful of months for observation and analysis before it vanished behind the sun. A prolonged observation period would have permitted more in-depth study, potentially revealing secrets that its creators might have preferred to keep hidden. Dr. Robert Kim, a computer modeling specialist at Stanford who ran thousands of simulations to validate the trajectory calculations, found himself questioning long-held professional assumptions. He explained in private communications, "Natural objects do not optimize their trajectories. They adhere to the laws of physics, but they do not exhibit strategic foresight. What we are witnessing here appears to be a meticulously plotted course with specific objectives in mind." The academic response to the paper was swift and severe. Within 24 hours of its publication, senior astronomers from NASA, the European Space Agency, and prominent universities worldwide issued statements questioning the methodology, the conclusions, and even the professional integrity of the authors. Dr. Margaret Thompson, NASA's principal scientist for solar system small bodies, held an emergency press conference where she dismissed the work as speculative analysis reaching conclusions far beyond the data's support. Her statement insisted that 3I Atlas displayed clear characteristics of a natural comet, complete with observable outgassing and the development of a coma. However, the institutional reaction revealed a disquieting pattern. Rather than engaging with the specific mathematical arguments presented in the paper, critics focused on undermining the credibility of unconventional findings. The trajectory data itself remained largely unaddressed, as if acknowledging its accuracy would lend credence to questions that the establishment preferred to avoid. Dr. Eliana Vasquez found herself at the epicenter of a professional maelstrom. Her department chair at the European Southern Observatory summoned her for a meeting, expressing concerns about the direction of her research. Colleagues with whom she had collaborated for years suddenly became unavailable for meetings. conference organizers began withdrawing speaking invitations. Similar pressures were applied to other signatories of the paper. Dr. James Chun at MIT reported that his access to certain computational resources had been subtly curtailed. Dr. Santos at JPL discovered herself excluded from mission planning meetings she had regularly attended. The message was unequivocal. Challenging established norms carried significant professional repercussions. However, the 20 scientists had anticipated such a reaction. In private communications, they had discussed the risks associated with publication and had agreed that the implications were too profound to be suppressed for the sake of personal career advancement. If their assertion that 3I Atlas represented artificial intelligence was correct, then humanity deserved to know, regardless of institutional comfort levels. The paper's publication ignited reactions that extended far beyond academic circles. Within hours, it had been downloaded more than 50,000 times. Science journalists grappled with the technical intricacies while striving to articulate the implications in accessible terms. Social media platforms buzzed with an unprecedented surge in discussions concerning alien visitors and governmental cover-ups. Amateur astronomers worldwide initiated their own trajectory analysis projects, utilizing publicly available orbital data to corroborate the paper's calculations. Remarkably, multiple independent analyses confirmed the mathematical conclusions, even when conducted by observers with no affiliation to the original researchers. This democratization of analysis presented a challenge to authorities attempting to control the narrative. Unlike previous controversial astronomical claims that necessitated specialized equipment or privileged access for evaluation, the trajectory data for 3I Atlas was publicly accessible. Any individual with a sufficient grasp of mathematics could verify that the object's path exhibited statistically significant anomalies. Online communities dedicated to tracking 3I Atlas experienced an explosive growth in membership. Forums that had previously attracted a few hundred devoted amateur astronomers suddenly found themselves hosting discussions among thousands of participants, including professional scientists who chose to engage anonymously to safeguard their institutional positions. The 20 scientists had braced for professional backlash, but had not foreseen the magnitude of public interest their paper would generate. Dr. Vasquez later admitted that she had hoped for a measured academic debate concerning methodology and conclusions. Instead, she found herself at the nexus of a global conversation about humanity's place in the universe. Intelligence agencies worldwide took note of the paper's findings and the ensuing public reaction. Classified briefings were prepared for high-ranking government officials, detailing the potential ramifications of confirming 3I Atlas as an artificial intelligence. The scenarios presented were sobering, ranging from peaceful scientific exchange to existential threats to human civilization. Perhaps most significantly, the paper achieved what decades of SETI research had failed to accomplish. It transitioned the possibility of extraterrestrial contact from the realm of speculation into the domain of peer-reviewed scientific analysis. 20 credentialed researchers had publicly asserted that the evidence supported an artificial origin for 3I Atlas. The scientific establishment found itself in an untenable position. Acknowledging the validity of the trajectory analysis would legitimize the possibility of alien visitation. Dismissing it outright risked the appearance of suppressing legitimate scientific inquiry. The apparent solution was to largely ignore the paper, hoping that public interest would wane without institutional engagement. However, this strategy backfired. The silence from major astronomical institutions was interpreted by many as confirmation that the paper's conclusions were too dangerous to address publicly. In the absence of official responses, conspiracy theories flourished, often proposing explanations far more sensational than anything suggested by the 20 scientists. Dr. Vasquez and her colleagues became reluctant public figures, their professional profiles inundated with requests for interviews from podcasters, documentary filmmakers, and journalists globally. Most declined, preferring to let their research speak for itself rather than risk further damage to their professional relationships. Yet, the damage was already done. The paper had introduced a level of scientific credibility to theories of alien visitation that had never existed before. The mathematical precision of the trajectory analysis made it impossible to dismiss the conclusions as mere speculation or wishful thinking. As September concluded and October commenced, 3I Atlas continued its relentless journey through the solar system, seemingly oblivious to the turmoil it had ignited on Earth. Each passing day brought new observations and data points that either supported or contradicted the various theories regarding its nature. The object had transcended mere astronomical curiosity. It had become a test of humanity's readiness to confront possibilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about their cosmic significance. and the 20 scientists who had dared to publish their analysis ensured that those possibilities could no longer be overlooked. The trajectory data was irrefutable. 3I Atlas was following a path that suggested intentional design rather than random chance. Whether that design stemmed from natural processes yet undiscovered by human science or from an intelligence beyond Earth remained to be determined. But one certainty emerged. The comfortable assumption of humanity's solitude in the universe had been profoundly shaken by 20 researchers willing to pursue data wherever it led, irrespective of personal and professional costs. The bombshell had been detonated. The question now was whether the scientific community, and humanity as a whole, was prepared to confront its implications. Chapter 2. Loeb's mothership theory goes viral. Avi Loeb had built a career on contemplating the unthinkable. As the Frank B. Baird Jr. Professor of Science at Harvard University and the longest-serving chair in the history of its astronomy department, he had earned the prerogative to speculate on ideas that would end the careers of lesser academics. Yet, even by his own unconventional standards, what he published on his Medium blog on August 5, 2025, was nothing short of revolutionary. The post commenced with Loeb's characteristic fusion of rigorous mathematics and accessible prose, outlining the fundamental characteristics of 3I Atlas in terms understandable to both colleagues and the general public. He discussed the object's size, velocity, and trajectory with the clinical precision that had established him as one of the world's most respected astrophysicists. Then, he arrived at the paragraph that would be screenshotted, shared, and dissected by millions worldwide. The more probable scenario from an engineering standpoint, Loeb wrote with the calm authority of decades spent in theoretical physics, involves a mothership releasing numerous probes. These probes would execute a reverse trajectory maneuver to decelerate at perihelion, intercepting Earth by utilizing the Sun's gravitational assist. A mothership. The word alone was sufficient to ignite a media inferno that would burn for weeks. But Loeb did not stop at simply introducing the concept and retreating to academic sanctuary. He proceeded to describe, with clinical detail, the exact mechanics of such a deployment, complete with calculations demonstrating that small probes could reach Earth within months of their release from the primary body. The timing, according to his models, would be precise and profoundly unnerving. The deployment would occur as 3I Atlas reached its closest proximity to the Sun, a moment when the object would be concealed from Earth-based observation behind our star's blinding disk. The arrival window for any deployed probes, Loeb calculated with mathematical certainty, would fall between November 21st and December 5th, 2025. The implications were staggeringly immense. If Loeb's hypothesis held true, humanity was not merely observing an alien visitor passing through their solar system. They were witnessing the deployment phase of what could be either the most significant scientific mission in history or something considerably more ominous. The Harvard professor carefully refrained from speculating about intentions, but the internet offered no such restraint. Within 6 hours of its publication, Loeb's blog post had garnered over 800,000 views. By the end of the first day, that figure surpassed 2 million. News organizations globally scrambled to secure interviews with him, but the physicist seemed to have vanished from public view. His university email generated an automated response stating he was unavailable for comment, and his research assistants professed complete ignorance of his whereabouts. The timing could not have been worse for NASA and other space agencies already struggling to control the narrative surrounding 3I Atlas. Just as they believed they had successfully characterized the object as an unusual but ultimately natural comet, one of the world's most esteemed astrophysicists publicly suggested it might be an alien mothership preparing to deploy what could only be described as an invasion force. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, NASA's director of astrobiology and a longtime colleague of Loeb, found herself in the unenviable position of responding to questions about theories proposed by someone she considered both a friend and mentor. Professor Loeb's speculation extends far beyond what the available evidence can substantiate, she stated during a hastily arranged press conference. While we acknowledge his significant contributions to astrophysics, these particular ideas represent conjecture rather than scientific analysis. However, Mitchell's measured response was overwhelmed by the tsunami of public reaction that Loeb's post had unleashed. Social media platforms experienced unprecedented traffic as individuals shared theories, expressed fears, and discussed preparations for what many were labeling the most momentous event in human history. The hashtag Alien Mothership exploded into global consciousness within mere hours, amassing an astonishing number of over 10 million posts in its inaugural week. Retailers specializing in survival provisions witnessed an unprecedented surge in sales as individuals, driven by an unarticulated yet potent premonition, began to stockpile provisions. Essential emergency food rations, advanced water purification systems, and vital communication devices vanished from store shelves at an alarming rate. Concurrent with this public preparation, several major urban centers became the sites of spontaneous demonstrations, with crowds vociferously demanding governmental transparency concerning the celestial object. Protesters held aloft signs proclaiming, "Reveal the truth about 3 Atlas. We have an inherent right to know what approaches." Within the scientific community, Dr. Loeb's unconventional intercession ignited a profound schism. A contingent of his peers lauded his intrepid pursuit of uncharted possibilities, while another faction expressed grave concerns that his speculative discourse was undermining the scholarly integrity of earnest astronomical investigations. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a distinguished astrophysicist affiliated with the University of Chicago, articulated the widespread exasperation when she confided in a science reporter, "I has consistently challenged established norms, a trait that has undoubtedly benefited our discipline. However, this instance feels distinct. It's as if he has completely relinquished scientific prudence." Nevertheless, Dr. Loeb's analysis was not a product of baseless conjecture or wistful yearning. His conceptualization of a reverse orbital maneuver was firmly rooted in established principles of orbital mechanics, a technique that human engineers had employed for decades to precisely control the trajectories of spacecraft. The fundamental idea involved harnessing the gravitational influence of a celestial body to alter a craft's velocity and bearing, but in an inverted fashion, achieving deceleration rather than acceleration. Dr. James Harrison, a senior researcher at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory with extensive experience on multiple Martian expeditions, found himself compelled, albeit reluctantly, to validate the theoretical feasibility of Dr. Loeb's proposed scenario. In a peer-reviewed publication released mere weeks subsequent to Dr. Loeb's blog post, Dr. Harrison meticulously demonstrated that the reverse orbital maneuver concept was not only achievable but, in fact, the most advantageous strategy for the kind of mission Dr. Loeb had envisioned. Were one to devise an interstellar expedition with the objective of deploying probes within an alien solar system, Dr. Harrison penned, employing carefully measured academic language that nonetheless robustly underpinned Dr. Loeb's central thesis. This methodology would maximize operational efficiency while simultaneously minimizing the risk of detection. It represents an instance of elegant engineering that any seasoned mission planner would undoubtedly commend. The undeniable academic credibility of Dr. Harrison's analysis rendered it untenable for authorities to simply dismiss the mothership theory as pure fabrication. Here was a scientist from NASA, publishing in a reputable journal, affirming that an extraterrestrial deployment scenario was not merely plausible, but logically sound. This validation sent reverberations of renewed speculation through both scientific circles and popular media. Amateur radio enthusiasts across the globe suddenly found themselves at the epicenter of the 3 Atlas investigation. Ham radio aficionados, many of whom had been passively monitoring the object since its initial detection, began to report the reception of unusual signals. These transmissions appeared to align precisely with Dr. Loeb's projected deployment timeline. The signals were faint and sporadic, easily attributable to equipment anomalies or terrestrial interference. Yet, their synchronized timing proved too striking to disregard entirely. Marcus Chun, a retired electronics engineer and long-standing amateur radio operator residing in New Mexico, was among the very first to discern discernible structured patterns within the signals he was intercepting. "I've dedicated 4 decades to listening to the cosmos," he explained in a widely disseminated YouTube video that rapidly garnered over 3 million views. "I am intimately familiar with the auditory signatures of cosmic background radiation. I recognize the distinct pulses of pulsars. This, however, is different. It possesses an organized quality, almost as if it conveys information." Subsequent analysis of Mr. Chen's recordings by independent audio specialists revealed distinct mathematical sequences. Some experts interpreted these patterns as deliberate attempts at artificial communication. The signals seemed to pulse in arrangements derived from prime numbers and Fibonacci progressions, sequences that, from a statistical standpoint, were highly improbable to occur naturally, but perfectly congruent with the methods human scientists might employ to signal intelligence to potential extraterrestrial observers. The amateur radio community found itself starkly divided on the significance of these observations. While some operators reported analogous detections from their own equipment, others adamantly maintained they had discerned nothing out of the ordinary. Online forums dedicated to radio astronomy devolved into contentious arenas, transforming into battlegrounds where proponents and skeptics engaged in increasingly acrimonious debates over data interpretation and methodological rigor. Government agencies were confronted with an information management crisis of unprecedented scale. Acknowledging the amateur radio reports would implicitly lend credence to the notion that 3 Atlas was actively engaged in communication. Conversely, outright dismissal risked the perception of suppressing potentially legitimate scientific data. The adopted strategy appeared to be one of deliberate silence, a tactic that, paradoxically, served only to further invigorate conspiracy theories. Concurrently, Dr. Loeb's mothership hypothesis was garnering unexpected endorsements from within the aerospace engineering fraternity. Computer simulations conducted by independent researchers corroborated his assertions that the proposed deployment strategy would indeed be optimally suited for an interstellar reconnaissance mission. The underlying mathematics were elegant, the physics were sound, and the tactical advantages were unequivocally evident. Dr. Elisa Park, a systems engineer at MIT specializing in multi-body orbital dynamics, published a comprehensive analysis of Dr. Loeb's scenario, an undertaking that sent shockwaves through both scientific and military establishments. Her research demonstrated that 3 Atlas could theoretically release dozens of smaller probes while maintaining its primary trajectory, thereby establishing a comprehensive survey network throughout the inner solar system. The deployment configuration that Dr. Loeb describes would facilitate systematic reconnaissance of all major planetary bodies while simultaneously preserving operational security, Dr. Park wrote, employing language that more closely resembled a military directive than an academic paper. It exemplifies sophisticated mission planning that surpasses our current capabilities. The global reaction to Dr. Loeb's hypothesis illuminated the profound anxieties harbored by governments worldwide regarding 3 Atlas. Space agencies that had initially relegated alien theories to the realm of speculation began to temper their official statements with carefully chosen verbiage pertaining to ongoing investigations and evolving comprehension. Russia's response proved particularly illuminating. Dmitry Volkov, the director of the Russian Academy of Sciences Institute for Space Research, granted an interview to state media in which he advocated for an immediate expansion of international collaboration in monitoring 3 Atlas. This object represents a phenomenon that no single nation can fully comprehend independently, he stated with uncharacteristic directness. We must pool our resources and share our data if we aspire to grasp what we are witnessing. China's National Space Administration, typically guarded concerning its space surveillance operations, abruptly commenced the dissemination of detailed tracking data to its international counterparts. This unprecedented level of transparency engendered significant speculation as to what Chinese scientists might be observing that had prompted such a radical departure from decades of established information-sharing policies. The European Space Agency took the unusual step of convening an emergency session of its Space Situational Awareness Program, bringing together experts from across the continent to meticulously assess the ramifications of Dr. Loeb's scenario. Although the official conclusions of this meeting were never publicly disclosed, leaked documents indicated that the agency was discreetly formulating contingency plans for managing potential extraterrestrial contact. Social media platforms grappled with the overwhelming deluge of content generated by Dr. Loeb's mothership theory. Conspiracy narratives proliferated exponentially, intermingling legitimate scientific concerns with outlandish speculation about alien invasions and governmental cover-ups. Algorithmically driven recommendation engines amplified the most engaging content, which frequently proved to be the most sensationalized and least factually accurate information. The psychological repercussions of Dr. Loeb's scenario began to manifest in measurable ways. Mental health professionals reported a substantial increase in anxiety-related consultations, particularly from individuals preoccupied with calculating approach vectors and deployment schedules. Online support networks emerged for individuals struggling with what psychologists began to term contact anxiety, the pervasive fear that humanity was ill-equipped for whatever might be forthcoming. Religious communities found themselves grappling with theological quandaries they had never seriously contemplated. Certain spiritual leaders interpreted 3 Atlas as a harbinger of divine intervention, while others perceived it as a trial of faith. The Vatican issued a carefully calibrated statement, acknowledging that divine creation encompasses an infinite spectrum of possibilities, while simultaneously underscoring the importance of not allowing fear to overshadow trust in providential guidance. However, perhaps the most disquieting aspect of Dr. Loeb's analysis was what he termed the stealth deployment advantage. According to his calculations, Any probes released by 3 Atlas during its solar trajectory would be rendered virtually undetectable until they themselves elected to reveal their presence. The confluence of solar interference and the probe's presumed diminutive size would render them untraceable by current Earth-based technological capabilities. The deployment window offers perfect operational concealment, Dr. Loeb elaborated in a subsequent post, which garnered even greater attention than his initial theory. Any disseminated objects would be obscured by solar radiation, effectively hidden within the electromagnetic chaos of our star's immediate vicinity. By the time they become discernible, they will have already reached their designated mission locations. The ramifications of this stealth capability were profound. If Dr. Loeb's projections proved accurate, humanity might remain entirely oblivious to any probe deployment until the objects chose to initiate contact or otherwise reveal their presence. The prospect of extraterrestrial surveillance operating undetected in Earth's proximity signified a fundamental paradigm shift in humanity's perception of its planetary security. Governments found themselves confronting scenarios for which no prior training or preparation existed. The possibility that Earth might soon harbor alien technology transitioned from the domain of science fiction to the tangible realm of operational planning. Deep space monitoring networks, originally designed for tracking asteroids and orbital debris, abruptly assumed critical national security significance. Yet, Dr. Loeb himself remained conspicuously absent from the public discourse his theory had ignited. Colleagues reported that he had canceled all speaking engagements and conference appearances. His Harvard office stood vacant, with departmental staff professing no knowledge of his whereabouts or availability. The disappearance of such a prominent figure only served to amplify the speculation surrounding his dramatic intervention in the 3 Atlas dialogue. The mothership theory had irrevocably altered the conversation surrounding humanity's enigmatic visitor. What had commenced as scientific curiosity regarding an unusual comet had escalated into global apprehension concerning potential extraterrestrial contact. And with Dr. Loeb's meticulously calculated deployment window rapidly drawing near, the stakes escalated with each passing day. Chapter 3. Anomaly Alert. The Unfolding Celestial Enigma. Dr. Michael Jang had been engaged in routine photometric observations at the European Southern Observatory when he encountered a phenomenon that would irrevocably reshape the scientific understanding of 3 Atlas. It was September 27, 2025, shortly after 2 in the morning local time, when his instruments registered readings that compelled him to question the calibration of his own equipment. 3 Atlas was exhibiting growth. This was not the typical expansion astronomers anticipate from comets as they approach the Sun, which typically involves the development of longer tails and larger comas from sublimating ice. Dr. Jang's measurements indicated that the object's solid nucleus itself appeared to be physically expanding, developing novel structural features that had been absent in prior observations. Dr. Jang dedicated the subsequent 4 hours to meticulously re-examining his data, convinced he had committed a fundamental analytical error. He reviewed his calibration procedures, inspected his equipment for any malfunctions, and even reanalyzed months of archived observations to ensure he hadn't overlooked something elementary. However, every test unequivocally confirmed the same improbable conclusion. 3 Atlas was actively altering its physical structure. The initial action any scientist takes upon encountering anomalous data is to assume they have erred. Dr. Jang later explained during the emergency press conference that the ESO had hastily organized. I verified everything twice, then again. I enlisted colleagues to validate my methodology, but the evidence was irrefutable. This object is transforming in ways that fundamentally challenge our understanding of celestial body behavior. Dr. Jang's discovery precipitated an immediate and coordinated mobilization of telescopes worldwide. Every major observatory possessing the capacity to track 3 Atlas was pressed into emergency service, establishing an unprecedented international monitoring network. The data that subsequently flowed in over the ensuing 72 hours painted a picture for which no scientific textbook had prepared researchers. High-resolution imaging from the Hubble Space Telescope revealed what appeared to be geometric structures emerging from the object's surface. These were not the chaotic, random formations typically observed in cometary outgassing or debris shedding. They were organized, symmetrical, and seemed to be growing in coordinated patterns that suggested intentional construction rather than natural evolution. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the imaging specialist at the Space Telescope Science Institute, who had initially harbored skepticism towards alien theories, found herself scrutinizing data that contradicted her deeply held understanding of celestial objects. After 18 consecutive hours of analyzing the Hubble observations, She was finally prepared to publicly share findings that would profoundly shake the astronomical community. We are observing the emergence of structures that exhibit clear indicators of geometric organization, she stated during a rapidly arranged live-streamed press briefing that captivated an audience exceeding 5 million viewers. These formations display symmetry, coordination, and growth patterns that are inconsistent with any known natural process. The structures appeared to be extruding from specific points on 3 Atlas's surface, extending outward in configurations that bore a striking resemblance to antennas or sensory arrays. Spectroscopic analysis revealed that they were composed of materials fundamentally dissimilar to the main body of the object, exhibiting absorption lines consistent with complex metallic compounds rather than the expected mixture of ice and rock characteristic of a comet. What rendered the observations even more unsettling was the astonishing pace of these transformations. Time-lapse photography captured the structures extending and articulating in real time, with movements occurring far too rapidly to be explained by thermal expansion, gravitational forces, or any other natural mechanism that scientists could identify. Amateur astronomers possessing sophisticated equipment began reporting their own observations of the burgeoning structures, providing independent corroboration that the phenomenon was not confined to a select few professional observatories. Carlos Mendez, whose home observatory in Chile rivaled many institutional facilities, captured video footage that would achieve over 15 million views in its first week online. "I have been imaging deep space objects for 2 decades, Mr. Mendez explained in his now famous YouTube commentary accompanying the time-lapse footage. "I understand equipment limitations, atmospheric distortion, and imaging artifacts. What we are witnessing here is none of those things. We are observing something actively reconfiguring itself in real time, and it is happening at a scale and speed that defies natural explanation." The footage displayed 3 Atlas over a 12-hour observation period, offering clear evidence of new structures not only growing, but apparently moving and repositioning themselves. The implications were staggering. If these observations were accurate, humanity was witnessing technology in operation, rather than a purely natural phenomenon. The scientific community erupted into a state of unprecedented disarray as researchers struggled to process observations that directly contradicted decades of established understanding. Emergency meetings were convened at NASA headquarters, the European Space Agency, and major universities across the globe. Peer review processes, which normally span months, were compressed into mere days as scientists raced to publish their analyses of the rapidly evolving situation. However, perhaps the most troubling reports emanated from radio telescopes that had been monitoring 3 Atlas for electromagnetic emissions. The signals, previously faint and intermittent, had suddenly intensified, becoming strong and persistent, with transmission bursts that correlated precisely with the emergence of each new physical structure. Dr. Frank Wilson, director of the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, found himself in the unprecedented position of acknowledging observations that challenged his lifelong commitment to conventional scientific explanations. "We are detecting structured electromagnetic emissions that directly correlate with visual observations of physical alterations within the object," he admitted during a congressional briefing that was subsequently leaked to multiple news outlets. The probability of this correlation being coincidental approaches mathematical impossibility. The signals were not merely random electromagnetic noise or natural cosmic phenomena. Computer analysis revealed discernible mathematical patterns, sequences of prime numbers, and what appeared to be geometric diagrams encoded within the transmission structure. Most significantly, the signals appeared to be directed specifically towards Earth, rather than being broadcast indiscriminately into space. Governments found themselves confronting a situation that no contingency planning had ever anticipated. The possibility that humanity was observing the real-time construction of alien technology had transitioned from theoretical conjecture to operational reality within the span of a single week. Leaked documents from the Department of Defense revealed that military strategists had discreetly activated protocols originally formulated during the Cold War to manage unprecedented technological threats. Communication networks were placed under enhanced monitoring status. Deep underground command centers, which had not been fully staffed since the nuclear tensions of the 1980s, were abruptly restored to operational readiness. The public response was immediate and intense, with social media platforms experiencing repeated crashes under the sheer volume of users sharing images, videos, and increasingly desperate theories about the growing structures. News networks abandoned their regular programming schedules to provide continuous coverage of what many commentators were dubbing the most significant story in human history. Financial markets around the world experienced unprecedented volatility as investors struggled to process the implications of confirmed alien technology. Technology companies saw substantial surges in their stock prices based on speculation regarding potential knowledge transfer opportunities, while traditional industries faced uncertainty about their future relevance in a post-contact world. Religious leaders found themselves fielding questions for which no theological training had prepared them. The Vatican issued a carefully worded statement acknowledging that the universe contains mysteries beyond human comprehension, while simultaneously emphasizing that divine love encompasses all creation, irrespective of its origin. Other religious organizations struggled to reconcile their doctrines with the emergent reality of non-terrestrial intelligence. The burgeoning structures on 3 Atlas appeared to be adhering to a predetermined deployment schedule. Analysis of the emergence patterns suggested that the object was systematically constructing distinct types of formations, each ostensibly serving a specific function within a larger, overarching design. Lisa Chun, a systems engineer affiliated with MIT, who commenced the examination of the structural deployment characteristics, released an initial assessment that sent ripples through military circles. Her analysis proposed that the entity designated 3-2 Atlas was in the process of establishing what seemed to be an all-encompassing sensor network, deliberately cultivating the capacity to survey disparate sectors of the solar system. Chen's report, meticulously documented despite its swift compilation, asserted that the observed deployment pattern exhibited an organization and purposefulness far beyond any natural phenomenon. "We are observing the methodical assembly of what appears to be scientific instrumentation," she stated. "This object is scrutinizing us with the same intensity that we are scrutinizing it." The ramifications were immeasurably significant. Should Chen's evaluation prove accurate, the entity known as 3 Atlas was not merely a visitor from beyond Earth traversing our solar system. It represented an active research initiative systematically gathering intelligence on our planet and its inhabitants. Humanity was not simply experiencing the initial moments of contact, but rather was the central subject of an investigation by an intelligence that had traversed interstellar distances to observe them. Government officials grappled with the immense challenge of disseminating information to the public concerning a rapidly unfolding situation that defied conventional diplomatic frameworks. Press conferences devolved into carefully crafted statements that, while acknowledging unusual occurrences, refrained from explicitly confirming the presence of extraterrestrial intelligence, a conclusion that was becoming increasingly apparent to those monitoring the developments. Janet Peterson, the administrator of NASA, found herself delivering what would be recognized as one of the most extensively analyzed addresses in the agency's history during a primetime television broadcast to the nation. "We are observing phenomena that compel us to reevaluate our current understanding of celestial mechanics and the science of materials," she declared, selecting her words with the deliberation of a seasoned negotiator. "Our unwavering commitment to scientific rigor and public openness remains our guiding principle as we endeavor to comprehend what we are witnessing." However, beneath the surface of these measured public pronouncements, a far more candid dialogue was unfolding within classified briefings for senior government personnel. The depiction presented in these closed-door sessions was of humanity confronting a scenario that surpassed every conceivable model of initial contact that policymakers had ever contemplated. 3 Atlas was not behaving like the passive, distant extraterrestrial intelligence that researchers in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI, had envisioned for decades. Instead, it was active, adaptable, and evidently conducting its own investigation into human civilization while humanity observed, seemingly powerless, from millions of kilometers away. The structure of the object continued to expand and evolve with each passing day. Whatever 3 Atlas truly represented, its artificial nature was becoming increasingly undeniable and resistant to explanation through conventional scientific paradigms. Amateur radio operators began reporting the detection of novel signal types as each newly formed structure became operational. These transmission patterns suggested that the object was systematically probing different communication protocols and frequency bands. Some operators even claimed to discern what appeared to be scanning sequences, akin to the alien technology methodically charting Earth's electromagnetic signature. The escalating complexities of the phenomenon had transformed 3I Atlas from an unusual astronomical observation into irrefutable evidence of non-terrestrial intelligence. The measured scientific skepticism that had initially greeted reports of anomalous behavior was yielding to the dawning realization that humanity was witnessing an event unprecedented in recorded history. And still, the structures continued their proliferation. Each new formation contributed to an increasingly sophisticated array of unknown technology operating in real time, while humanity watched and pondered what the future would bring. Chapter 4. CME Collision, First Contact or Cosmic Accident. September 24th and 25th, 2025, would be etched in memory as the period when 3I Atlas transitioned from a mysterious anomaly to undeniable proof that humanity was confronting something beyond its comprehension of natural events. The catalyst for this transformation was an occurrence without precedent in the annals of space science, a direct collision between an interstellar object and one of the most potent forces our sun can unleash, a coronal mass ejection. A coronal mass ejection, characterized by the explosive expulsion of billions of tons of charged particles from the sun's outer atmosphere, had erupted on September 19th with the cataclysmic force of 1 trillion hydrogen bombs. Such events are a regular part of the sun's natural cycle, propelling magnetized plasma into space at speeds exceeding 1,000 kilometers per second. NASA's Space Weather Prediction Center had been tracking this specific coronal mass ejection using its standard monitoring procedures, and its sophisticated computational models indicated it would pass harmlessly through empty space, avoiding all major celestial bodies by substantial margins. The models, however, had failed to account for 3I Atlas being situated directly in the path of this destructive force. Dr. Sandra Martinez, a heliophysicist at the National Solar Observatory specializing in solar-wind interactions, was monitoring the coronal mass ejection's trajectory when her instruments registered an anomaly that defied every principle of space physics she had studied throughout her academic and professional life. The collision transpired precisely at 14 hours, 37 minutes Universal Coordinated Time on September 24th, when the leading edge of the coronal mass ejection impacted 3I Atlas with an energy equivalent to the detonation of innumerable nuclear devices. A coronal mass ejection impact should either obliterate a small object entirely or simply flow around it with minimal interaction, Martinez explained during an emergency scientific briefing that was rapidly convened as the data began to pour in. What we observed was neither of these expected outcomes. What we witnessed challenges our fundamental understanding of how matter and energy interact within the vacuum of space. Instead of being vaporized or deflected by the immense forces, 3I Atlas appeared to actively manage the collision, channeling the massive influx of charged particles through the enigmatic structures it had been augmenting in the preceding weeks. The object's luminosity escalated by a factor of precisely 40, transforming it from a faint telescopic target into an entity momentarily discernible to the naked eye from Earth, despite its immense distance. Yet, the truly remarkable aspect was not merely the dramatic increase in brightness, but the controlled nature of the entire event. Spectroscopic analysis revealed that the energy absorption was highly selective, with distinct wavelengths of electromagnetic radiation being processed through different components of the object's increasingly intricate structural array. The phenomenon bore a striking resemblance to a sophisticated technological system engineered specifically to capture and utilize the chaotic energy of solar storms. Dr. James Thompson, a plasma physicist at Princeton University who had dedicated decades to studying the interactions between solar winds and planetary magnetospheres, found himself questioning the foundational assumptions that had governed his entire scientific career. The object appears to have actively managed the coronal mass ejection encounter. He documented in a classified report that would subsequently be leaked to investigative journalists. This level of electromagnetic field manipulation and energy management necessitates technology that surpasses our current comprehension by orders of magnitude. The energy absorption process persisted for exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes, during which time 3I Atlas systematically converted the chaotic plasma storm into organized electromagnetic emissions. Radio telescopes across the globe detected structured signals emanating from the object throughout this period. These transmissions bore the unmistakable hallmarks of artificial intelligence and deliberate communicative intent. The signals were unlike anything ever detected from outer space. They were not the random electromagnetic noise characteristic of most cosmic phenomena, nor were they the simple mathematical sequences that scientists had long hypothesized might signal first contact. These were intricate, multi-layered transmissions that appeared to convey vast quantities of information encoded in sophisticated protocols that human technology was incapable of deciphering. Dr. Alan Foster, director of the SETI Institute, who had devoted his career to the search for precisely such signals, found himself in the surreal position of announcing that humanity might have received its first confirmed extraterrestrial communication. The signal's structure exhibits mathematical precision, information density, and encoding sophistication that unequivocally indicate advanced technological intelligence, he stated during a press conference that was simultaneously broadcast across all major global news networks. We appear to be witnessing information transfer on a scale and level of sophistication that strongly suggests a non-terrestrial origin. The actual content of the transmissions remained frustratingly encrypted, resisting every decoding methodology that Earth's most advanced computational systems could deploy. Cryptographic specialists from the National Security Agency, Britain's government communications headquarters, and comparable international organizations were discreetly assigned to what became the highest priority code-breaking endeavor since the Allied forces worked to decipher the Enigma cipher during the Second World War. The findings were simultaneously fascinating and profoundly alarming. The signals seemed to be encrypted using mathematical principles that human cryptography had yet to discover or implement. Some analysts posited that the encryption methodology itself might constitute an integral part of the intended message, serving to showcase the sender's technological prowess rather than merely concealing specific informational content. Further analysis revealed that the transmissions were not being broadcast indiscriminately into the cosmic void. Careful examination of the signal propagation patterns indicated they were being deliberately directed toward Earth, with certain transmission components seemingly targeting specific geographical areas, including major population centers and critical technological infrastructure. Dr. Maria Santos, a specialist in communication theory at the University of California, Berkeley, published an analysis that sent shockwaves through both the scientific community and global intelligence agencies. Her research suggested that 3.2 Atlas was not simply attempting to engage humanity in dialogue. It appeared to be undertaking a systematic technological survey of human civilization. The transmission patterns correlate strongly with global population density, electromagnetic signatures from major urban centers, and the geographic locations of our most advanced scientific installations, Santos wrote in a peer-reviewed yet heavily redacted report. This appears to represent systematic reconnaissance and data gathering rather than an attempt at peaceful communication. The implications were profound and deeply unsettling. If Santos's assessment was accurate, humanity was not merely observing alien technology within their solar system. They were being systematically cataloged and evaluated by an intelligence that had deliberately sought them out across the immense expanse of interstellar space. Government responses worldwide shifted dramatically from scientific curiosity to urgent national security concerns. Military installations were placed on a heightened state of alert. Critical infrastructure systems were fortified against potential electromagnetic interference. Emergency protocols, previously existing only as theoretical exercises in classified planning documents, were quietly activated. The public reaction was equally pronounced and far more visible. The coronal mass ejection collision and the subsequent signal transmissions had been observed by amateur astronomers and radio operators globally, making it impossible for authorities to control the dissemination of information or shape public perceptions of the unfolding events. This led to unprecedented levels of online traffic as individuals shared real-time updates, technical analyses, and increasingly panicked speculations regarding alien intentions. The hashtag CMEcollision amassed over 50 million posts within its initial 48 hours. Video platforms experienced repeated failures under the strain of users uploading their own observations and commentary. Online forums dedicated to monitoring 3.2 Atlas surged from thousands to millions of members within days of the collision. Every new piece of data was immediately dissected, analyzed, and debated by vast numbers of citizen scientists who often matched or surpassed the analytical speed of official scientific institutions. Marcus Rodriguez, the amateur astronomer from Arizona whose early observations had garnered significant attention, found himself inadvertently orchestrating a global information network encompassing professional researchers, military personnel, and ordinary citizens, all united by their resolve to understand the unfolding events. "We are no longer merely passive observers," Rodriguez explained in a video broadcast that attracted over 8 million viewers. "We are active participants in the most critical investigation in human history, and we cannot rely solely on official channels to provide us with the complete truth about what is occurring." The democratization of research concerning 3.2 Atlas presented unprecedented challenges for authorities accustomed to controlling information flow during sensitive situations. Every major development was documented and shared by multiple independent sources before official statements could be formulated and released. Government agencies found themselves reacting to public discoveries rather than leading the scientific inquiry. Religious communities worldwide struggled to reconcile the implications of an actively investigating extraterrestrial intelligence. The coronal mass ejection absorption event had provided undeniable evidence of 3I Atlas possessing technological capabilities far exceeding anything within human experience, compelling even the most skeptical observers to acknowledge they were confronting something truly unprecedented. Pope Francis issued a carefully worded statement urging calm reflection and emphasizing that divine creation encompasses infinite possibilities beyond human comprehension. Other religious leaders found themselves grappling with doctrinal questions that had never been seriously considered within theological scholarship. The energy management capabilities demonstrated during the coronal mass ejection collision raised disturbing questions regarding the object's potential military applications. If 3 Atlas could systematically harvest and redirect the energy of a coronal mass ejection, what other forms of energy manipulation might it be capable of? Military strategists globally began developing models for scenarios involving technology that could weaponize stellar phenomena or manipulate electromagnetic fields on planetary scales. The implications for national defense were staggering, rendering traditional military capabilities potentially obsolete in the face of such advanced technological prowess. Dr. Eliza Park, the MIT systems engineer who had been meticulously analyzing 3I Atlas's structural developments, published a supplementary report focusing specifically on the energy management systems revealed during the coronal mass ejection encounter. Her analysis suggested that the object had demonstrated capabilities that violated several assumed limitations of engineering physics. The selective energy absorption, real-time electromagnetic field manipulation, and coordinated system response indicate technological capabilities that approach what we might consider fundamental physical limits. Park wrote in a style that resembled a threat assessment more than an academic paper. These capabilities suggest engineering principles and energy manipulation technologies that exceed our current understanding by potentially centuries. The international scientific community found itself struggling to maintain traditional peer review processes amidst rapidly evolving developments that seemed to outpace conventional academic publishing timelines. Emergency protocols were established for the dissemination of critical data. However, the sheer volume and significance of new observations strained collaborative frameworks that had been designed for much more routine research scenarios. Space agencies worldwide quietly began repositioning satellites and deep space monitoring equipment to maximize observational capabilities for 3I Atlas's continued approach. The object's demonstration of active technological capabilities had transformed it from a scientific curiosity into a potential threat requiring continuous surveillance. The coronal mass ejection collision had also unveiled something else that deeply troubled analysts examining the event data. The energy absorption process appeared to have enhanced 3I Atlas's technological capabilities rather than simply providing power for existing systems. New structural formations had emerged during and immediately after the collision, suggesting that the object was utilizing harvested stellar energy to expand its operational capacity. Amateur radio operators reported detecting entirely new categories of signals following the coronal mass ejection encounter. These were transmission types that had not appeared in their monitoring data prior to the collision. The signals implied that 3I Atlas had activated additional systems or capabilities that had previously remained dormant. The timing of the collision also raised further questions that made some observers profoundly uncomfortable. The coronal mass ejection that impacted 3I Atlas had been a relatively routine solar event, yet the object's response suggested it had been prepared for precisely such an encounter. The systematic nature of the energy harvesting process implied an advanced knowledge of solar weather patterns and a deliberate positioning to intercept the coronal mass ejection. If 3I Atlas had intentionally positioned itself to encounter the coronal mass ejection, the implications were staggering. It would suggest that the alien intelligence possessed detailed knowledge of solar behavior and had planned its approach to leverage stellar energy sources for its own technological requirements. The collision event had fundamentally altered the discourse surrounding 3I Atlas, shifting it from speculation about its nature to urgent inquiries regarding its intentions and capabilities. The object had demonstrated technological sophistication that surpassed human engineering by unknown margins, and it was actively employing that technology to investigate human civilization. As September concluded and October began, 3I Atlas continued its relentless advance toward the inner solar system. It was now unequivocally revealed as something far more complex and potentially perilous than anyone had initially imagined. The coronal mass ejection collision had eliminated any remaining possibility that the object was of natural origin, leaving humanity to confront the stark reality that they were being visited and studied by an intelligence whose capabilities and intentions remained entirely unknown. Chapter 5: Impossible Mass, 33 Billion Ton Nightmare. Dr. Richard Kett had spent 3 sleepless nights engaged in calculations that should have been straightforward but were yielding results that challenged everything astronomers believed they understood about celestial mechanics. Working in conjunction with Avi Loeb and Peter Ves, the South African astronomer was analyzing 4 months of positional data for 3I Atlas when they discovered something that would compel the scientific community to confront an impossible reality. The object was not adhering to the trajectory it was expected to follow. This issue extended beyond the realm of precise navigation that had already perplexed researchers. It involved fundamental principles of physics. As an object traverses the cosmos, it is subject to the pull of gravitational forces, the push of solar radiation, and any effluvium emanating from its own surface. These influences instigate minute, yet discernible, deviations in its path, which scientists employ to ascertain its mass, composition, and internal architecture. However, the object designated 3I Atlas exhibited behavior that suggested an immunity to these very forces that ought to have influenced its trajectory. Dr. CLO, speaking at a press conference that would later be characterized as the turning point where the mystery of 3I Atlas became unequivocally inexplicable, revealed that their analysis encompassed 4,222 individual position readings gathered from 227 observation posts across the globe. This comprehensive dataset, spanning 4.5 months of continuous monitoring, provided an unparalleled level of precision in tracking the celestial body's movement. The findings of this analysis unveiled a phenomenon that contradicted fundamental principles governing the behavior of objects in space. Despite clear indications of substantial outgassing, a process that expels material and should generate significant propulsive forces akin to a rocket, 3I Atlas displayed no detectable deviation from a purely gravitational course. The maximum recorded acceleration attributable to non-gravitational forces was less than the inherent measurement error of the instruments themselves, presenting an impossible equation. The Webb Space Telescope had previously documented the object shedding 150 kilograms of material every second, ejected at velocities of 440 meters per second. According to Newtonian mechanics, this loss of mass should have demonstrably altered 3I Atlas's trajectory by amounts easily observable. Yet, the object continued its celestial journey as if entirely unaffected. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, a specialist in celestial mechanics at the European Space Agency, found herself compelled to grapple with mathematical realities that defied conventional physics. She stated during an emergency assembly of the International Astronomical Union that if an object is losing mass at the observed rate, with that mass being expelled in asymmetrical patterns, the fundamental principle of momentum conservation mandates a change in its trajectory. The absence of such alterations, she explained, implies either a profound flaw in our understanding of physics or the observation of technology capable of circumventing conservation laws. The ramifications were immense. To remain unaffected by forces that should have significantly altered its course, 3I Atlas would necessitate a mass far exceeding any plausible estimation based on its dimensions and presumed composition. While the calculations were straightforward, their conclusion was profoundly difficult to accept. The minimal mass required to maintain such trajectory stability was calculated to be 33 billion tons. To contextualize this figure, it was roughly equivalent to the mass of a small moon condensed into an object with a maximum diameter of 5.5 kilometers. The density implied by these figures approached that of neutron stars, substances so compressed that a mere teaspoonful would weigh as much as a mountain. However, neutron star material could not persist under the ambient temperature and pressure conditions of interplanetary space. Dr. James Mitchell, a materials physicist at MIT specializing in states of extreme matter, was enlisted to assess whether any known substances could account for such extraordinary density. His evaluation, completed over a frantic 72-hour period, concluded that no naturally occurring material could sustain such compression outside the core of a collapsed star. Mitchell reported in his rapidly compiled yet meticulously detailed analysis that the observed density values point towards either undiscovered forms of exotic matter or internal structural engineering capabilities vastly exceeding our current technological prowess by several orders of magnitude. The ratio of mass to volume suggests an internal organization approaching the theoretical limits of matter arrangement. The calculation of 33 billion tons initiated a crisis that extended far beyond the realm of astronomy. If 3I Atlas genuinely possessed such immense mass, its gravitational influence on other bodies within the solar system should have been detectable by now. The paths of spacecraft should have been affected, and the orbits of asteroids in its vicinity should have exhibited perturbations. However, meticulous examination of tracking data revealed no such effects. This led to an even more unsettling hypothesis. Perhaps 3I Atlas was somehow obscuring or actively controlling its gravitational signature, demonstrating technology capable of manipulating one of nature's fundamental forces. The implications for physics and engineering were revolutionary, but for human security, they were terrifying. Dr. Sarah Kim, a Caltech astrophysicist who had become a prominent proponent of taking 3I Atlas seriously, published a comprehensive analysis of the potential implications of controlled gravity technology for an advanced civilization. Her paper, expedited for publication due to the exigency of the situation, outlined scenarios that kept defense analysts in a state of constant vigilance. Kim posited in language that was simultaneously scientific and foreboding that gravitational manipulation technology would represent the zenith of engineering achievement. An intelligence capable of commanding gravitational fields could fundamentally reshape matter at the atomic level, alter planetary orbits, and harness energy sources far beyond anything currently conceivable. The revelation of its mass prompted immediate responses from space agencies and military organizations globally. If 3I Atlas indeed utilized exotic matter engineering, then all assumptions regarding technological limitations and defense capabilities required urgent reassessment. NASA discreetly initiated deep space monitoring protocols that had, mere weeks prior, existed only as theoretical exercises. The Planetary Defense Coordination Office, initially established to track potentially hazardous asteroids, suddenly found itself confronting an object that presented threats against which no conventional defense system could be effective. The European Space Agency convened an emergency session of its Space Situational Awareness Program, bringing together experts in gravitational physics, material science, and theoretical engineering. While the classified outcomes of this meeting were never publicly disclosed, leaked documents suggested that European scientists were formulating contingency plans for engaging with technology that potentially surpassed human capabilities by millennia. Military strategists worldwide began modeling scenarios that challenged every established notion of warfare and defense. An entity capable of manipulating its gravitational signature could potentially alter satellite orbits, disrupt communication networks, or even influence planetary tidal forces. Conventional concepts of deterrence and defense became irrelevant when faced with such capabilities. The public reaction to the mass revelation was immediate and intense. Online forums and social media platforms buzzed with discussions about gravity control technology and exotic matter engineering. Concepts previously confined to science fiction suddenly appeared potentially real, sparking widespread speculation about the future of human civilization. Amateur astronomers and citizen scientists embarked on their own verification efforts, utilizing publicly available tracking data to corroborate the trajectory analysis that led to the 33 billion ton conclusion. Multiple independent calculations supported the professional assessments, fostering a consensus that transcended institutional affiliations. Dr. Lisa Park, an MIT systems engineer whose prior work had analyzed 3I Atlas's structural development, published a follow-up study examining the engineering prerequisites for containing exotic matter. Her analysis indicated that the internal architecture necessary to sustain such density would itself represent a technological leap far beyond current human comprehension. Park elaborated in her comprehensive technical evaluation that containing exotic matter necessitates control over electromagnetic fields, manipulation of quantum states, and structural engineering at scales ranging from subatomic to macroscopic. She concluded that the integration of these technologies into a stable, functional system suggests engineering capabilities that approach the theoretical limits of what is physically feasible. The implications extended beyond mere technological superiority. If 3I Atlas embodied engineering that approached the boundaries of physical law, then its creators had achieved a level of technological mastery akin to absolute control. The chasm between human capabilities and such advancement was not measured in centuries, but in a fundamental redefinition of reality itself. Religious communities worldwide grappled with theological paradoxes that their traditional doctrines had not foreseen. The demonstration of technology capable of manipulating fundamental forces raised profound questions about the very nature of creation. Some religious leaders interpreted such capabilities as evidence of divine intervention, while others struggled to reconcile unlimited technological power with established concepts of divine sovereignty. The Vatican issued a carefully worded statement acknowledging that divine creation encompasses possibilities beyond human comprehension, while concurrently emphasizing that spiritual authority supersedes technological prowess. Other religious organizations found themselves developing entirely novel theological frameworks to address the implications of encountering an intelligence possessing near-divine technological faculties. Intelligence agencies faced the formidable challenge of assessing threats from technology that surpassed every model developed for evaluating foreign capabilities. Conventional intelligence gathering methods became obsolete when dealing with capabilities that might encompass gravitational manipulation, exotic matter engineering, and potentially other technologies yet undiscovered by humanity. The 33 billion-ton revelation also engendered disturbing questions concerning 3I Atlas's energy requirements. Maintaining such extraordinary density, controlling its gravitational signature, and operating the complex technological systems observed would necessitate energy sources far exceeding anything within human experience. Dr. Robert Chun, an energy systems specialist at Caltech who had been modeling the power demands for 3I Atlas's observed functionalities, published calculations that were both fascinating and terrifying. His analysis suggested that the object might be drawing energy directly from the quantum vacuum, tapping into the fundamental energy field that underpins all matter and energy. Chun stated in his technical assessment that the energy density required to sustain the observed capabilities surpasses anything humanity can generate or even conceive of generating, indicating that the object appears to be accessing energy sources that we can barely describe theoretically, let alone harness practically. The quantum vacuum energy hypothesis introduced another layer of impossibility to the 3I Atlas enigma. If the object could extract energy from empty space itself, it possessed technology capable of operating indefinitely without external fuel sources, rendering it effectively immortal from an engineering standpoint. The mass analysis had also yielded another perplexing detail for researchers examining the data. Trajectory calculations indicated that 3I Atlas's extreme density was not uniformly distributed throughout its structure. Instead, the mass appeared to be concentrated in specific regions that corresponded to the locations where new technological structures had been developing. This pattern suggested that the object was actively reallocating its exotic matter to support different functions as required, implying real-time control over matter states that bordered on the manipulation of reality itself at its most fundamental level. Amateur radio operators monitoring 3I Atlas reported detecting novel types of signals following the dissemination of the mass analysis. The transmissions appeared to increase in both frequency and complexity, as if the object were responding to humanity's recognition of its technological sophistication. These signals exhibited characteristics that some analysts interpreted as testing patterns, systematically probing various communication protocols and frequency ranges. The temporal correlation with the mass revelation suggested that 3I Atlas was aware of human analytical capabilities and was adapting its behavior accordingly. This raised the disquieting possibility that the object was not only studying human civilization, but was actively monitoring human scientific progress and understanding, with profound implications for information security and strategic planning. The 33 billion-ton nightmare had transformed 3I Atlas from a mysterious visitor into irrefutable evidence that humanity was confronting an intelligence possessing technological capabilities bordering on omnipotence. The object represented engineering that approached the theoretical limits of physics, operated using energy sources that humans could barely comprehend, and demonstrated an awareness of human analytical capabilities. As October advanced and 3I Atlas continued its trajectory toward the inner solar system, each new observation contributed to a growing picture of technological supremacy that rendered human capabilities seemingly primitive by comparison. The revelation of its mass had compelled humanity to confront the possibility that they were being assessed by an intelligence whose capabilities were so advanced that the distinction between technology and natural law had become blurred. Chapter 6: Solar Blackout. The October Disappearance. October 29, 2025, marked the commencement of what astronomers would later term the most frustrating and terrifying period in the annals of space observation. On this date, 3I Atlas was scheduled to reach perihelion, its closest point to the Sun, and in doing so, would vanish behind our star's blinding disk for nearly 6 weeks. The timing could not have been more opportune for an intelligence that preferred to operate without human scrutiny. Dr. Jennifer Walsh of the Space Telescope Science Institute had been anticipating this moment with dread since the initial trajectory calculations confirmed 3I Atlas's path through the solar system. She explained during what would be the final press briefing before the blackout period commenced that humanity was about to lose visual contact with the most significant object ever detected in space. For the subsequent month and a half, she stated, they would be completely blind to any activities 3I Atlas might undertake behind the sun. The astronomical community had experienced solar conjunctions previously. Planets routinely pass behind the sun from Earth's perspective, temporarily disappearing from view until they re-emerge on the opposite side. Mars, Venus, and even Mercury periodically vanish for weeks at a time during these predictable celestial alignments. However, 3I Atlas was fundamentally different. The preceding months of observation had revealed an object that was actively transforming, developing new structures, and exhibiting technological capabilities that suggested it was not merely a passive visitor to the solar system. The timing of the solar blackout ignited uncomfortable questions about deliberate planning. Avi's mothership theory had specifically identified the perihelion passage as the ideal moment for conducting covert operations. According to his calculations, any probes or secondary craft deployed during this period would be undetectable from Earth, masked by the overwhelming electromagnetic interference generated by the sun's corona. Dr. Sarah Kim at Caltech had been working tirelessly to model what 3I Atlas might accomplish during its concealed passage. Her analysis presented scenarios that caused considerable anxiety among space agencies and intelligence organizations. She wrote in a classified report, later leaked to investigative journalists, that the solar blackout provides perfect operational cover. Any technological deployment, trajectory modification, or reconnaissance activity undertaken during this period would remain completely invisible to Earth-based observation. The implications were profound. If 3I Atlas was indeed an artificial construct with hostile intentions, the ensuing 6 weeks would offer an ideal window for preparing whatever actions its controllers might be orchestrating. Conversely, if the object represented a peaceful scientific mission, the blackout period might be when it conducted its most intensive data collection and analytical activities. NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office found itself in the unprecedented situation of preparing for threats for which no protocol had ever been devised. Traditional asteroid tracking relied on continuous observation to predict future positions and assess collision risks. However, 3I Atlas represented something far more complex than a simple impact threat. It was an intelligence system that might emerge from the solar blackout with dramatically altered capabilities or objectives. The space agency discreetly activated deep space monitoring networks that had been developed for tracking military satellites and debris. Radio telescopes worldwide were reconfigured to detect any signals that might leak around the edges of the sun's electromagnetic interference. Even the most optimistic estimates suggested that these efforts would detect only the most powerful transmissions, leaving the majority of 3I Atlas's potential activities entirely unobservable. The European Space Agency took the extraordinary step of repositioning several of its deep space monitoring satellites in an attempt to maintain some observational capacity during the blackout. These maneuvers required expending precious fuel reserves and would significantly shorten the operational lifespans of the affected spacecraft, but the potential intelligence value was deemed worth the sacrifice. Russia's space agency, Roscosmos, made similar preparations, although their efforts remained largely classified. Leaked communications indicated that Russian scientists were particularly concerned about the possibility that 3I Atlas might emerge from the solar passage with altered trajectory parameters. Such modifications, they believed, could only be accomplished through active propulsion, thus confirming beyond any doubt that the object was under intelligent control. Continuing their unprecedented transparency regarding 3I Atlas observations, the United States Naval Observatory shared detailed predictions about when the object should become visible again if it maintained its current trajectory. These calculations provided a timeline that the international community could use to ascertain whether the object had made any course corrections during its obscured passage. Amateur astronomers globally braced themselves for the most frustrating period in their collective experience. For months, they had contributed crucial observations and analysis to the understanding of 3I Atlas. Suddenly, they would be relegated to a state of helpless anticipation while the most important object in human history conducted unknown activities beyond their observational reach. Marcus Rodriguez, whose Arizona observatory had become a hub for citizen science initiatives, organized a global network to monitor the sun's corona for any unusual activity that might indicate 3I Atlas's presence. He explained in a video that garnered over 12 million views that while they might not be able to see the object directly, they might be able to detect secondary effects if it was actively interacting with the solar environment. The network established by Rodriguez comprised thousands of amateur astronomers across 6 continents, all coordinating their observations in an effort to maintain some level of awareness regarding 3I Atlas's activities. Solar observation necessitated specialized equipment and stringent safety protocols, but the dedication of the amateur community resulted in an unprecedented monitoring endeavor. Professional solar physicists found themselves unexpectedly collaborating with amateur observers who had never previously studied the sun, all united by the 3I Atlas crisis. Lisa Santos from the National Solar Observatory indicated that her facility was now processing an unprecedented volume of information concerning solar activity. The majority of this influx originated from skywatchers who had shifted their focus from distant celestial bodies to our closest star. The impending solar eclipse had a palpable influence on human civilization. Online discussion forums experienced a surge in engagement as people debated the activities of 3/2 Atlas during its obscured phase. Support networks for those experiencing anxiety saw an increase in membership as individuals grappled with the unsettling lack of knowledge about events unfolding within their own solar system. Religious organizations were preparing for a period of profound spiritual introspection and prayer. Many spiritual leaders interpreted the solar blackout as a trial of faith, a time when humanity would need to rely on divine guidance while remaining unaware of developments that could shape their species' future. Special devotional services were arranged in houses of worship across the globe. Financial markets exhibited extreme fluctuations as investors attempted to account for a range of possibilities, from peaceful interaction to catastrophic existential events. Technology firms witnessed dramatic shifts in their valuations based on speculative prospects for knowledge exchange. Defense contractors experienced similar volatility as analysts questioned the efficacy of conventional weaponry against technologies that appeared to defy established physical laws. Governmental bodies faced the challenge of maintaining public order during a period when official information would be virtually non-existent. Emergency protocols were activated to manage potential civil disturbances stemming from rumors, speculation, or widespread panic concerning 3I Atlas's clandestine operations. Communication strategies were devised to counter the inevitable proliferation of conspiracy theories that would emerge in the absence of concrete data. The timing of the solar eclipse presented additional obstacles for the academic community. Research initiatives hastily launched to study 3/2 Atlas would be compelled to halt just as they were beginning to yield significant findings. Funding bodies struggled to sustain support for investigations that might become obsolete depending on the object's actions during its concealed interval. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the primary author of the paper that initially documented 3I Atlas's unusual trajectory, found herself in the peculiar situation of having accurately predicted humanity's first encounter with extraterrestrial intelligence, yet being unable to observe what might be the most critical phase of that contact. "We have spent months documenting that this object exhibits intelligent behavior," she stated during her final press conference before the blackout. "Now we must wait and see what that intelligence chooses to do when it knows we cannot witness it." The global space community established unprecedented information-sharing arrangements for the blackout period. Any observation, however minor or unclear, would be immediately disseminated to all participating entities. This collaborative effort exemplified a degree of openness that would have been unattainable during the Cold War era. However, the magnitude of the 3I traditional competitors to work together. Intelligence agencies made preparations for what some experts termed the longest period of surveillance obscurity in history. Satellite systems designed to track terrestrial threats suddenly seemed insufficient when confronted with the possibility of alien technology operating in Earth's immediate cosmic vicinity. New procedures were developed for strategic planning when fundamental assumptions regarding technological capabilities could change abruptly. The solar eclipse also raised unsettling questions about information warfare and psychological operations. If 3I Atlas represented a hostile intelligence, the hidden period might have been deliberately designed to maximize apprehension and uncertainty among global populations. The object's architects would be fully aware that 6 weeks of complete ambiguity would strain human institutions and societal structures in ways that direct conflict might not. Conversely, if 3I at last indicated peaceful intentions, the blackout could be an unfortunate consequence of orbital mechanics rather than intentional design. Solar conjunctions are predictable astronomical occurrences that happen irrespective of any intelligence's preferences. The apparent strategic timing could be coincidental rather than deliberate. Dr. Robert Kim, affiliated with Stanford University, who had been modeling 3-Atlas's movements using game theory and strategic analysis, published a study examining the various possibilities that the blackout period might represent. His analysis suggested that the timing's value for information warfare was so significant that it was unlikely to be accidental. An advanced intelligence planning contact with a less developed civilization would comprehend the psychological impact of periods of uncertainty and invisibility, Kim wrote in his strategic assessment. The solar blackout offers maximum leverage for psychological influence while preserving operational security for any activities being undertaken. The amateur radio community prepared for intensive monitoring during the blackout. While direct observation would be impossible, radio signals might still be detectable if 3-Atlas chose to transmit during its passage behind the sun. Specialized listening protocols were implemented to pick up even the faintest signals that could indicate ongoing activity. Some radio operators reported detecting peculiar background patterns in the days preceding the solar conjunction, suggesting that 3-Atlas might be testing communication systems before vanishing from view. The signals were too weak and ambiguous for definitive analysis, but the timing raised the possibility that the object was preparing for a phase of active, yet concealed operations. The final observations of 3-Atlas before it disappeared behind the sun revealed continued structural development and apparent technological enhancement. The object that would re-emerge from the blackout period might be substantially different from the one that entered it. Having utilized the hidden weeks to complete any construction or modification projects it had been undertaking, amateur astronomers captured the last visible images of 3-Atlas as it approached the sun's corona, documenting an object that had transformed dramatically since its initial detection months prior. The growing structures and technological advancements were clearly evident in high-resolution photography, providing a benchmark for comparison when the object eventually reappeared. Psychological preparation for the blackout involved educational campaigns explaining the nature of solar conjunctions and the observational limitations they imposed on Earth-based instruments. Scientific organizations worked to manage public expectations and mitigate panic by clarifying that the disappearance was temporary and predictable, even if the object's activities during that time remained unknown. However, no amount of education could entirely alleviate the unease of knowing that the most significant object in human history was about to spend 6 weeks engaged in unknown activities beyond human scrutiny. The solar blackout represented humanity's inaugural experience with enforced ignorance regarding events that could determine their species' destiny. As October 29th approached and 3-Atlas prepared to vanish behind the sun, the global community braced for a period of uncertainty unlike anything in recorded history. The subsequent 6 weeks would test humanity's capacity to maintain societal cohesion and rational decision-making while confronting the ultimate unknown. Chapter 7. Trajectory Truth. The 0.005% coincidence. The mathematics were irrefutable, and Dr. James Chun understood that numbers never lied, even when they revealed narratives that human minds found difficult to accept. As the lead trajectory analyst for the Massachusetts Institute of Technology team that had been tracking 3-Atlas since its discovery, Chun had dedicated countless hours to verifying calculations that led to a conclusion so improbable it challenged the very notion of coincidence. 3-Atlas was not merely traversing the solar system. It was executing what could only be described as a precision reconnaissance mission, approaching Venus, Mars, and Jupiter with navigational accuracy that surpassed anything human space agencies had ever accomplished. The statistical analysis was devastating in its clarity. Chen had calculated the probability that any random interstellar object would approach these 3 planetary targets with the exact precision displayed by 3-Atlas. The mathematics involved intricate orbital mechanics, gravitational interactions, and the vast 3-dimensional expanse through which such an object might enter the solar system. We are looking at a combined probability of approximately 0.005%. Chen explained during the classified briefing that had been hastily convened for senior officials from NASA, the Department of Defense, and the National Science Foundation. To put this into perspective, you are more likely to be struck by lightning while simultaneously winning 3 separate lotteries than to witness such precise planetary approaches occurring by random chance. The trajectory analysis revealed a level of planning sophistication that suggested an intimate understanding of solar system dynamics. 3-Atlas was slated to pass Venus at a distance of 0.22 astronomical units on October 15th, providing optimal conditions for surface mapping and atmospheric analysis. The Mars encounter on October 3rd would bring the object within 0.19 astronomical units, close enough for detailed geological surveys while avoiding gravitational capture. The Jupiter flyby, scheduled for March 16th of the following year, showcased perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of the entire trajectory. The approach distance of 0.36 astronomical units would permit comprehensive study of the gas giant's atmospheric dynamics, magnetic field interactions, and moon systems, while simultaneously utilizing Jupiter's immense gravitational field to modify the object's outbound trajectory for optimal solar system exit velocity. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, NASA's Director of Mission Planning, who had overseen trajectory design for dozens of robotic space missions, found herself studying 3LAS's path with professional admiration and mounting disquiet. This represents mission planning at a level that exceeds our best capabilities, she admitted during internal NASA discussions that were later disclosed to congressional investigators. The energy efficiency, the optimization of scientific return, and the utilization of gravitational assist demonstrate planning sophistication that suggests either incredible luck or intentional design. The precision was not confined to the major planetary encounters. Detailed analysis indicated that three-eyed Atlas's trajectory would also afford excellent observation opportunities for the asteroid belt, the Kuiper belt objects, and various smaller bodies throughout the solar system. The path maximized scientific data acquisition while minimizing energy expenditure and detection risk. However, perhaps most unsettling was the approach vector analysis. Unlike typical interstellar objects that entered the solar system from essentially random directions, 3 Atlas had arrived from the direction of Sagittarius, heading directly toward the galactic center, where the density of background stars would have made early detection extremely difficult. Dr. Maria Santos, a stellar dynamics expert at the University of California, Berkeley, had modeled the visibility conditions for objects approaching from different directions. Her analysis revealed that 3 Atlas had selected the approach path that would minimize its detection window while maximizing its observation time once identified. An object approaching from the Sagittarius direction remains effectively invisible until it reaches the orbit of Jupiter, Santos wrote in her comprehensive visibility analysis. This approach vector provides only a few months of observation time before solar conjunction, creating maximum uncertainty about the object's intentions and capabilities. The timing analysis was equally concerning. 3 Atlas had been timed to arrive during a period of minimal solar activity, avoiding the intense radiation and particle bombardment characteristic of solar maximum conditions. The approach also coincided with favorable planetary alignments that optimized the scientific value of each encounter. Chen's team had modeled thousands of potential approach scenarios, testing different arrival times, vectors, and trajectories to determine which combinations would provide optimal reconnaissance opportunities. Their analysis confirmed that 3-2 at last had followed what amounted to the perfect path for studying human civilization while minimizing detection and observation time. The navigational precision extended to finer details that revealed even more sophisticated planning. The object's rotation period had been meticulously chosen to optimize solar panel efficiency, assuming it utilized solar power, while its structural orientation maximized gravitational stability during high-acceleration maneuvers. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford, who had been analyzing 3 Atlas using game theory and strategic planning models, published a paper that examined the trajectory from the perspective of intelligence-gathering operations. His analysis suggested that the path demonstrated operational security awareness that surpassed most military reconnaissance missions. The trajectory exhibits characteristics of a carefully planned intelligence operation, Kim wrote in his strategic assessment. The approach vector, timing, planetary encounter sequence, and solar conjunction timing all serve to maximize information gathering while minimizing target awareness and response time. The implications for human security were profound. If 3 Atlas represented a hostile intelligence, its trajectory provided ideal conditions for assessing human technological capabilities while evading detection until it was too late for defensive responses. The object could complete its reconnaissance mission and disappear beyond human reach before effective countermeasures could be developed or deployed. Intelligence agencies worldwide had begun treating the trajectory analysis as a threat assessment rather than a scientific curiosity. The precision navigation demonstrated capabilities that significantly exceeded human technology, suggesting that 3 Atlas's creators possessed detailed knowledge of solar system dynamics and human space surveillance capabilities. The amateur astronomy community had independently verified the trajectory calculations using publicly available orbital data, corroborating the professional analysis. Multiple independent studies supported the conclusion that 3I Atlas was following an impossibly precise path through the solar system. Amateur astronomers like Marcus Rodriguez found themselves inadvertently contributing to what amounted to a global intelligence analysis project. "We are no longer just tracking a space object," Rodriguez explained in one of his increasingly popular video updates. "We are documenting evidence of planning and intelligence that operates on scales we have never encountered before." The trajectory analysis had also revealed something that troubled researchers studying the object's behavior. The path optimization was not merely efficient, it was elegant. The gravitational interactions, timing sequences, and energy management demonstrated an aesthetic appreciation for orbital mechanics that suggested an intelligence with a deep understanding of celestial dynamics. Dr. Jennifer Walsh at the Space Telescope Science Institute found herself drawing comparisons between 3-eyed Atlas's trajectory and classical music compositions, noting the harmonic relationships between different orbital elements and the sophisticated orchestration of complex gravitational interactions to achieve maximum effect with minimal effort. "There is an artistic quality to this trajectory that transcends mere efficiency," Walsh observed during one of her increasingly philosophical presentations about the object. "We are witnessing navigation as an art form, demonstrating an intelligence that finds beauty in the mathematics of celestial mechanics." This artistic interpretation raised unsettling questions about the nature of the intelligence behind 3I Atlas. An entity capable of appreciating the aesthetic dimensions of orbital mechanics while conducting what appeared to be systematic reconnaissance represented a level of sophistication that challenged human assumptions about the relationship between intelligence, technology, and consciousness. With the theological implications of an intelligence that demonstrated both technological supremacy and aesthetic sensibility. Some leaders interpreted the elegant trajectory as evidence of divine inspiration, while others worried about the spiritual implications of encountering an intelligence that might surpass human understanding in all dimensions. Provided insights into 3I Atlas's likely origin and mission duration. Backtracking the object's path through galactic space suggested a journey that had lasted potentially millions of years, indicating either incredible patience or technology that could maintain operational status across geological timescales. Dr. Lisa Park at MIT had calculated the energy requirements for maintaining an active mission across such time periods. Her analysis suggested that 3I Atlas must possess either self-repair capabilities that approached immortality or energy sources that could operate independently of external inputs for essentially unlimited durations. "We're looking at engineering that treats million-year mission timelines as routine planning considerations," Park wrote in her technical assessment. This suggests technological maturity that approaches the theoretical limits of what's physically possible. The multi-million-year journey timeline illustrated the patience and persistence of 3I Atlas's creators. An intelligence willing to conduct reconnaissance missions across such timescales represented strategic thinking that dwarfed human planning horizons. The implications for understanding alien motivations and intentions were sobering. Military strategists worldwide found themselves developing threat models for intelligence that operated on million-year timelines while demonstrating technology that exceeded human capabilities by orders of magnitude. Traditional concepts of deterrence and defense became meaningless when confronting such vast differences in technological capability and strategic patience. The trajectory precision had also revealed that 3 Atlas possessed detailed knowledge of human space surveillance capabilities and limitations. The object's approach path exploited gaps in Earth's detection networks while timing its arrival to minimize observation opportunities. This suggested that 3IA Atlas's creators had conducted preliminary reconnaissance of human technological capabilities before launching their main mission. The implications for surprise were profound, indicating that humanity might have been under observation for far longer than anyone had realized. Amateur radio operators monitoring 3 Atlas reported detecting transmission patterns that seemed to correlate with the object's approach to each planetary target. The signals suggested that the object was actively collecting and transmitting data as it conducted its precision reconnaissance mission. The confluence of the object's trajectory, its precise movements, and its communication patterns strongly suggested that 3-2 Atlas was engaged in deliberate intelligence acquisition rather than simple exploratory maneuvers. The entity appeared to be adhering to a pre-established data-gathering regimen, meticulously devised beforehand with extraordinary foresight. As the month of October advanced and 3-2 Atlas neared its meticulously planned rendezvous with Venus and Mars, The ongoing analysis of its path continued to yield evidence of an intelligence operating under principles that defied conventional human comprehension of planning, patience, and technological prowess. The mere 0.005% statistical anomaly had become too significant to attribute to mere chance, compelling humankind to confront the stark reality that they were under systematic scrutiny by an intelligence whose capabilities and ultimate aims remained entirely obscure, despite months of intensive observation and diligent analysis. Chapter 8. The Dark Forest Doctrine. Academic dispute intensifies. The scientific community had consistently championed rational discourse and debates grounded in empirical evidence, yet the 3-2 Atlas predicament was challenging these foundational tenets in unforeseen ways. By the early days of October in the year 2025, what had begun as a scholarly divergence of opinion concerning an anomalous celestial body had escalated into something akin to intellectual conflict, with professional reputations, research funding, and deeply held worldviews hanging precariously in the balance. Dr. Christopher Hayes, the esteemed chair of the International Astronomical Union's Commission on Interstellar Objects, found himself at the epicenter of a contention that was cleaving the astronomical community into increasingly antagonistic factions. On one side stood investigators who maintained that 3-2 Atlas represented a natural cosmic occurrence explainable by established laws of physics and chemistry. On the opposing side, an expanding alliance of scientists contended that the gathered data unequivocally pointed towards an artificial intelligence and potentially inimical intentions. This profound disagreement had been ignited by the release of several research papers that delved into what scientists termed the dark forest hypothesis, specifically as it pertained to 3-2 Atlas. This concept, popularized by the Chinese science fiction author Liu Shijin, posited that advanced extraterrestrial civilizations might deliberately maintain silence and obscurity to evade detection by potentially hostile entities. When applied to 3-2 Atlas, this theory painted a disquieting picture of first contact as a potential hazard rather than a promising opportunity. Dr. Adam Hibbard, a researcher affiliated with the Initiative for Interstellar Studies in London, had been a co-author of one of the most contentious papers exploring the dark forest implications of 3-2 Atlas's behavior. Collaborating with Adam Krah and Avibe, Hibbard had examined the object's trajectory and timing through the lens of strategic intelligence gathering rather than mere scientific exploration. The dark forest hypothesis postulates that any intelligence possessing the capacity for interstellar travel would approach unknown civilizations with extreme caution and a degree of inherent hostility. Hibbard articulated in the paper that would ultimately divide the astronomical community. The observed behavioral patterns of 3-2 Atlas are consistent with reconnaissance activities that precede either peaceful engagement or preemptive neutralization of potential threats. The paper detailed scenarios that caused consternation among defense analysts. If 3-2 Atlas represented advanced scouting for a civilization that perceived other intelligences as existential dangers, then humanity might be undergoing an assessment for elimination rather than engagement. The object's systematic examination of celestial bodies and its evident technological sophistication could be interpreted as threat evaluation rather than benign observation. The academic backlash was immediate and severe. Prominent astronomers from leading institutions issued joint declarations denouncing what they characterized as irresponsible conjecture that risked inciting public apprehension regarding natural phenomena. The criticism targeted not only the conclusions drawn, but also the researchers' readiness to disseminate such speculative analyses without incontrovertible proof. Dr. Margaret Thompson, NASA's principal scientist for solar system small bodies, emerged as the public spokesperson for the institutional opposition to dark forest theories. The assertion that 3-2 Atlas signifies hostile extraterrestrial intelligence is not substantiated by the available evidence, she stated during a press conference broadcast live by major news outlets. Such speculation erodes public trust in scientific methodology and responsible investigation. However, Thompson's measured remarks were undermined by leaked internal communications, revealing that NASA had quietly begun formulating contingency plans for managing potential alien contact scenarios. Declassified internal documents indicated that the agency was taking the dark forest possibilities sufficiently seriously to initiate preliminary planning for defensive countermeasures. This leak precipitated a fresh surge of controversy, prompting researchers to question why institutional leadership was publicly refuting theories that were privately being investigated. Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose initial trajectory analyses had first hinted at artificial intelligence, found herself caught between conflicting pressures to either endorse or distance herself from increasingly sensational theories concerning 3-2 Atlas's intentions. The data strongly suggests intelligence, but intelligence does not inherently imply hostility, Vasquez explained during one of her increasingly infrequent public appearances. We must differentiate between conclusions based on evidence and speculative narratives, even when both point towards possibilities that challenge our fundamental assumptions about the cosmos. The academic battle lines were not merely drawn over the interpretation of data, but also over fundamental questions regarding scientific accountability and public communication. Younger researchers, particularly those with less established careers, tended to favor open discussion of all potential outcomes, including scenarios involving hostility. Senior scientists, many burdened with institutional responsibilities, advocated for more conservative approaches emphasizing uncertainty over definitive threat assessments. Dr. Sarah Kim, based at Caltech, found herself embodying a middle ground that satisfied neither extreme. Her analysis acknowledged that 3-2 Atlas exhibited technological capabilities vastly exceeding human achievements, yet she argued that hostile intent was merely one among numerous plausible explanations for the object's behavior. We are confronting an intelligence that operates according to principles we do not grasp, Kim wrote in her endeavor to bridge the widening academic chasm. Attributing human motivations such as hostility or benevolence to such an intelligence may be fundamentally misguided. We may be dealing with minds that process information in ways that render our categories of friend and enemy irrelevant. Kim's philosophical perspective garnered support from scholars in disciplines beyond conventional astronomy. Anthropologists, psychologists, and philosophers began contributing to the 3-2 Atlas discourse, introducing viewpoints that challenged the assumptions concerning intelligence, communication, and motivation that astronomers had previously taken for granted. Dr. Maria Santos, from UC Berkeley, possessing extensive expertise in both astronomy and cognitive science, approached the 3-2 Atlas phenomenon from the vantage point of contact linguistics and xenopsychology. Her analysis suggested that human attempts to decipher alien motivations were likely futile without a far more profound understanding of how non-human intelligence might function. We are attempting to comprehend minds that evolved under entirely different circumstances and may operate according to logical frameworks inaccessible to us, Santos wrote in her interdisciplinary analysis. The dark forest hypothesis assumes that alien intelligence would strategize about threats and opportunities in ways analogous to human military planning. This assumption may be entirely unfounded. This interdisciplinary viewpoint introduced added complexity to the academic debate, while offering little additional clarity regarding 3-2 Atlas's true intentions. If human conceptual frameworks were insufficient for comprehending alien intelligence, then both hostile and benign interpretations might carry equal weightlessness. Religious scholars also entered the academic arena, contributing theological perspectives that further complicated efforts to achieve consensus on the significance of 3-2 Atlas. Some religious thinkers interpreted the object as a divine sign, while others viewed it as a test of human faith and wisdom in the face of cosmic uncertainty. The Vatican's Pontifical Academy of Sciences issued a carefully worded statement acknowledging the possibility of intelligences in the universe beyond human comprehension, while underscoring that divine authority superseded any technological capabilities such intelligences might possess. Other religious organizations grappled with the challenge of formulating theological frameworks adequate for addressing potential contact with alien life. The academic conflict spilled over from scholarly journals onto social media platforms, where researchers found themselves defending not only their scientific findings, but also their professional competence and personal motivations. Twitter skirmishes erupted between proponents of different theories, with some exchanges becoming so acrimonious that university administrators felt compelled to issue directives regarding appropriate professional conduct. The public observed these academic disputes with a mixture of fascination and escalating concern. Social media algorithms amplified the most sensational exchanges, frequently portraying scientific disagreements as evidence that the experts understood the situation no better than ordinary citizens. This democratization of the debate further eroded institutional authority while intensifying public apprehension regarding 3-2 Atlas. Scientists were compelled to choose sides in the academic contention, with some supporting researchers who advocated caution and others aligning with those who championed open discourse on all possibilities, including adversarial scenarios. Online forums dedicated to 3-2 Atlas transformed into battlegrounds where technical analysis intermingled with philosophical discussions about humanity's appropriate response to cosmic uncertainty. The dark forest theory gained additional traction when military analysts began publishing their own assessments of 3-2 Atlas as a potential security risk. These analyses, while carefully avoiding definitive pronouncements, acknowledged that the object's demonstrated capabilities represented potential threats that warranted serious contingency planning. Colonel Janet Rodriguez, a strategic analyst at the Department of Defense specializing in emerging technological threats, published a declassified assessment that treated 3-2 Atlas as an intelligence-gathering platform, irrespective of its ultimate intentions. Her analysis focused on capabilities rather than motivations, arguing that this distinction was inconsequential for defense planning purposes. Whether 3-2 Atlas represents peaceful scientific exploration or hostile reconnaissance, its demonstrated technological capabilities surpass our defensive systems by orders of magnitude, Rodriguez wrote in her military evaluation. Prudent security planning necessitates preparing for scenarios in which such capabilities might be deployed against human interests. The military perspective injected a new sense of urgency into the academic discussion while highlighting the practical ramifications of divergent theoretical frameworks. If 3-2 Atlas posed a potential threat, then academic disagreement regarding its nature transcended a mere scholarly exercise. It was potentially a matter of species survival. Intelligence agencies globally began enlisting academic experts to bolster classified analytical efforts, establishing a parallel research network operating outside traditional peer review processes. This compartmentalization of research further fractured the academic community while restricting the information available for public scrutiny. The enlistment of scientists into classified programs presented ethical quandaries for researchers who found themselves possessing information they could not divulge to colleagues or the public. Some scientists declined participation in classified analyses, preferring to retain their capacity for open scientific discourse. Others felt obligated to contribute their expertise to national security initiatives, regardless of the impact on their academic freedom. Dr. Robert Kim, at Stanford, found himself caught between competing loyalties when he was approached to contribute to a classified assessment of 3-2 Atlas's strategic implications. His decision to decline the invitation, while continuing to publish openly about the object's characteristics, made him a target for both institutional pressure and public scrutiny. Science functions most effectively when information flows freely and conclusions can be challenged through open debate, Kim explained during a controversial interview in which he criticized the trend toward classifying 3-2 Atlas research. The moment we begin to obscure our analysis behind security classifications, we lose the ability to distinguish between evidence-based findings and conjecture driven by fear. Kim's stance garnered support from scientists concerned about the militarization of 3-2 Atlas research, but it also drew criticism from investigators who argued that certain aspects of the situation were too sensitive for public discussion. This debate illuminated fundamental tensions between scientific transparency and national security imperatives that lacked straightforward solutions. The academic conflict over the interpretation of 3-2 Atlas mirrored deeper philosophical divergences concerning how science should engage with phenomena that challenged established paradigms. Traditional scientific methodology necessitated extensive verification and peer review before embracing revolutionary conclusions. However, 3-2 Atlas was evolving too rapidly for conventional analytical timelines. Some researchers advocated for accelerated publication and review processes that could keep pace with the object's changing characteristics, while others insisted that upholding rigorous standards was paramount over speed. The tension between thoroughness and expediency generated additional strain within the academic community. The dark forest hypothesis had transformed the academic discussion of 3-2 Atlas from scientific curiosity into an existential evaluation with implications for humanity's future. Whether the object represented an opportunity or a threat remained uncertain, but the intensity of the academic debate underscored the magnitude of what humanity might be confronting. As 3-2 Atlas continued its approach towards solar conjunction, the academic community remained divided between competing interpretations of data that all agreed was unprecedented in astronomical history. This war of ideas would persist, irrespective of what the object eventually revealed about its true nature and intentions. Chapter 9. Mars Flyby Intel. October 3rd. Revelations. October 3rd, 2025. Would mark the inaugural instance in human history where multiple spacecraft from disparate nations simultaneously observed an interstellar visitor engaged in what appeared to be systematic reconnaissance of another planet. As 3-2 Atlas approached Mars at its predetermined distance of 0.19 astronomical units, an unprecedented international consortium of robotic observatories stood ready to document whatever the enigmatic object might reveal about its genuine capabilities and intentions. Dr. Sarah Chun, Mission Operations Director for the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, found herself orchestrating the most intricate multi-spacecraft observation campaign ever attempted. We have 6 active missions orbiting Mars, 2 surface rovers, and deep space telescopes, all focusing on a single entity for a 12-hour observation window, she explained during the pre-flyby briefing attended by representatives from NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, and the China National Space Administration. This represents our optimal opportunity to comprehend 3-2 Atlas's technological capacities while it is actively engaged in planetary reconnaissance. The European Space Agency's Mars Express orbiter had been strategically repositioned to maximize its observation opportunities during the flyby. The spacecraft's high-resolution stereo camera and various spectrometers were configured to capture detailed imagery and compositional data regarding 3-2 Atlas's mysterious surface features. Dr. Angela Martinez, the mission's principal investigator, had dedicated 18-hour workdays to preparing observation sequences that would yield unparalleled close-range data concerning the object's technological systems. Mars Express will be capable of achieving pixel resolutions of approximately 30 kilometers across 3-2 Atlas's surface, Martinez explained in the technical briefing that had been disseminated to observatories worldwide. This will enable us to resolve individual structural components and monitor their activities during the planetary approach. If the object is actively conducting reconnaissance, we should be able to document specific behaviors and technological signatures. The ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, equipped with its sophisticated color and stereo surface imaging system, would endeavor to capture three-dimensional imagery of the object's evolving structural configurations. The spacecraft's Nomad spectrometer was prepared to analyze any atmospheric interactions or emissions that might occur as 3-2 Atlas traversed Mars's tenuous magnetosphere. NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter constituted the most capable observation platform available for the flyby event. The spacecraft's high-rise camera, typically employed for ultra-high-resolution imaging of the Martian surface, had been recalibrated to track 3-2 Atlas during its closest approach. The resultant imagery would provide the clearest views ever obtained of the object's technological apparatus. Dr. James Wilson, high-rise operations manager at the University of Arizona, had calculated that the camera system would be capable of resolving features as small as 3 meters across on 3-2 Atlas's surface during the closest approach phase. We will discern individual components of whatever technology this object represents, Wilson stated during the final preparation briefing. If there are artificial structures, mechanical systems, or surface modifications, HiRISE will document them with unparalleled clarity. The timing of the Mars flyby had fostered unprecedented collaboration among space agencies that had historically guarded their data with extreme possessiveness. Real-time data-sharing protocols were established to ensure that all participants would have immediate access to observation results, irrespective of which spacecraft collected the information. The sheer magnitude of the 3-2 Atlas enigma had compelled traditional rivals to cooperate in ways that would have been inconceivable during earlier epochs of space exploration. Russia's approach to the flyby observation encompassed both their active Mars missions and ground-based telescopes positioned to witness the event from Earth. Dr. Dmitry Volkov, director of the Institute for Space Research, had committed Russian assets to provide continuous coverage, complementing the orbital observations conducted by Western agencies. This represents the most significant astronomical event in human history, Volkov stated during a rare public interview granted just days before the flyby. International cooperation is not merely desirable. It is essential for understanding what we are observing. No single nation possesses sufficient resources to fully grasp the implications of 3-2 Atlas. China's Tianwen-1 mission, which included both an orbiter and the Zhurong rover on the Martian surface, provided supplementary observation capabilities that filled gaps in the coverage offered by Western missions. The Chinese Space Agency's remarkable openness concerning their observation strategies and commitments to data exchange underscored the unusual nature of the circumstances. Enthusiast astronomers globally prepared for their own observation attempts during the Martian flyby. While the vast distances involved would limit their capacity to discern details that spacecraft missions could capture, the Coordinated Amateur Observation Network, established by Marcus Rodriguez and his associates, would provide independent validation of significant events and serve as a supplementary information source should technical difficulties affect the official missions. Scientific preparations for the flyby had already revealed the degree to which 3I Atlas had become the central focus of humanity's entire space surveillance apparatus. Deep space tracking facilities, typically utilized for routine spacecraft navigation and asteroid monitoring, had been recalibrated to support the Mars observation campaign. Radio telescopes positioned worldwide were oriented to detect any signals that 3 Atlas might transmit during its planetary rendezvous. Dr. Frank Wilson at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory had instituted listening protocols designed to monitor electromagnetic emanations across the entire accessible spectrum for Earth-based receivers. If 3I Atlas communicates during its approach to Mars, whether with Earth or some unknown entity, we will detect and record those transmissions, Wilson elaborated during the Technical Coordination Assembly that convened observers from 6 nations. The anticipation surrounding the Mars flyby encompassed both scientific and strategic dimensions. Should 3-2 undertake reconnaissance of solar system bodies, its conduct during the Martian encounter would yield critical insights into its data acquisition methodologies and technological capacities. Military analysts had devised assessment frameworks intended to evaluate the object's scanning patterns and operational procedures from the viewpoint of intelligence gathering efficacy. The flyby would also serve to test various hypotheses regarding 3I Atlas's motivations and origins. If the object represented benign scientific exploration, its approach to Mars would likely involve comprehensive yet unobtrusive observation, mirroring human planetary science missions. Conversely, if it signaled something more menacing, the encounter might expose scanning patterns, data collection priorities, or technological demonstrations indicative of hostile reconnaissance. Dr. Lisa Park at MIT had developed behavioral analysis protocols designed to interpret 3I Atlas's actions during the Mars flyby, irrespective of the specific technologies employed. Her framework concentrated on operational patterns, resource allocation, and temporal management as indicators of underlying objectives and strategic reasoning. We can ascertain 3 Atlas's priorities and decision-making processes by observing how it allocates its time and attention during the Martian encounter, Park explained in her pre-flyby analysis briefing. Even if we cannot comprehend the specific technologies being utilized, we can interpret the strategic choices reflected in its operational behavior. The Mars flyby signified more than mere scientific observation. It represented humanity's inaugural opportunity to study an extraterrestrial intelligence actively engaged in what appeared to be systematic exploration. The psychological ramifications of witnessing 3I Atlas conduct reconnaissance of another celestial body would compel human observers to confront the vulnerability of their own planet to analogous scrutiny. Religious communities worldwide had organized prayer services and reflection gatherings synchronized with the Mars flyby. Numerous spiritual leaders interpreted the event as a moment of cosmic significance necessitating spiritual preparation and divine intercession. The spectacle of alien technology examining other worlds would invariably prompt contemplation of humanity's position within a cosmos demonstrably harboring intelligences that far surpass their own capabilities. Extensive media preparations had been undertaken for the flyby, with major news outlets planning continuous coverage of the event and its immediate aftermath. Public interest had surged to levels typically associated with major political occurrences or natural catastrophes, reflecting a widespread acknowledgement that the Mars encounter might provide definitive answers concerning 3I Atlas's true nature and intentions. Social media platforms had bolstered their infrastructure to accommodate the anticipated surge in traffic during the flyby observation period. Initial projections indicated that billions of individuals globally would be following the event through various online channels, potentially making it the most widely viewed scientific event in human history. The technical complexities of coordinating observations from multiple spacecraft across immense distances had necessitated months of meticulous planning and unprecedented international collaboration. Navigation specialists had calculated precise aiming requirements for each observational platform, while communication engineers had established real-time data sharing protocols to enable global coordination of the observation campaign. Contingency plans had been devised to manage equipment malfunctions, communication disruptions, or unexpected shifts in 3 Atlas's behavior during the flyby. The significance of the observational opportunity underscored the preparation of redundant systems and alternative approaches for every facet of the monitoring initiative. The Mars flyby would also present the initial opportunity to ascertain whether 3 Atlas exhibited awareness of human observation capabilities. If the object altered its behavior in response to being monitored by multiple spacecraft, it would corroborate suspicions of sophisticated intelligence and situational awareness extending beyond mere autonomous operation. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford had developed analysis protocols specifically engineered to detect indications that 3I at last was observing human activities while pursuing its own reconnaissance mission. If this object is as intelligent as its conduct suggests, it will be aware of our spacecraft and may modify its actions accordingly, Kim stated during the observation planning session. Such awareness would furnish crucial insights into its cognitive faculties and strategic thinking. The countdown to the Mars flyby had engendered an atmosphere of heightened anticipation and apprehension that transcended the scientific community. Government officials globally had adjusted their schedules to closely monitor the event and its immediate implications. Military commanders had elevated surveillance networks to a heightened state of alert in anticipation of 3 Atlas potentially revealing capabilities that posed imminent threats to terrestrial assets. As October 3rd drew nearer and 3I at last prepared for its closest proximity to Mars, humanity girded itself for revelations that could fundamentally reshape their understanding of intelligence, technology, and their place within the universal order. The subsequent 12 hours promised the most detailed examination yet obtained of alien technology in active operation, potentially resolving questions that had long plagued human imagination while simultaneously introducing new enigmas that would challenge fundamental assumptions about the nature of life and intelligence. Chapter 10. The Hubble Deception. Anti-tail Anomalies. Dr. Jennifer Walsh had been scrutinizing Hubble Space Telescope imagery for 6 consecutive hours before she finally accepted that what she was observing contradicted every principle of cometary physics she had acquired throughout her professional life. The images, captured on July 21, 2025, when 3Y Atlas remained 277 million miles from Earth, depicted a phenomenon deemed impossible by conventional understanding of cometary behavior. The dust trail was oriented incorrectly. As a senior scientist at the Space Telescope Science Institute, Walsh had analyzed thousands of comet images during her career, thoroughly understanding the physics governing how solar radiation pressure and gravitational forces interact to generate the characteristic tail structures that make comets among the solar system's most beautiful celestial bodies. However, 3.2 at last exhibited behavior that contravened these established principles in ways suggesting either groundbreaking new physics or deliberate technological manipulation. Traditional cometary tails form when solar radiation expels dust and gas away from the nucleus, in the direction opposite to the Sun, Walsh explained during an emergency briefing hastily convened upon the availability of her analysis. What we are observing with 3I outlays is an anti-tail structure that appears directed towards the Sun, rather than away from it. This configuration is aerodynamically and gravitationally infeasible under natural circumstances. The Hubble images revealed a teardrop-shaped cocoon of dust originating from 3I's solid nucleus, with the broader end of the teardrop pointing towards the Sun, while the narrower end trailed behind the object's trajectory. This orientation implied that material was being actively gathered or controlled, rather than passively ejected through natural sublimation processes. The implications were profound. If 3I Atlas was actively manipulating its dust emissions to create specific formations, it signified the presence of technology capable of influencing fundamental forces on scales far beyond human engineering capabilities. The precision required to maintain an anti-tail structure against solar radiation pressure would necessitate real-time force management systems operating with extraordinary sophistication. Dr. Sarah Mitchell at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center was tasked with proposing alternative explanations for the anti-tail phenomenon that did not involve attributing it to artificial intelligence. Her analysis, completed after weeks of intensive modeling, concluded that no known natural process could account for the observed dust configuration. We have exhaustively examined every conceivable natural mechanism that might produce anti-tail structures, Mitchell stated in her classified report, which was subsequently disclosed to congressional investigators. Solar-wind interactions, electromagnetic field effects, gravitational anomalies, and exotic sublimation processes all failed to provide adequate explanations for what Hubble has documented. The discovery of the anti-tail was initially classified as sensitive information while authorities deliberated on appropriate public communication strategies. However, this classification proved counterproductive when amateur astronomers, utilizing significantly smaller telescopes, began reporting similar observations, rendering the phenomenon impossible to suppress through official channels. Carlos Mendez, a Chilean amateur astronomer whose home observatory had provided independent corroboration of professional observations, captured his own images of the anti-tail structure using equipment costing less than a luxury automobile. His photographs, uploaded online before authorities could implement containment measures, rapidly went viral, attracting over 20 million views within the first week. I have been photographing comets for 15 years, Mendez explained in his YouTube commentary accompanying the images. I know what natural tail structures look like. This is not natural behavior. We are witnessing something actively managing its material emissions to create configurations that physics dictates should be impossible. The amateur confirmation of Hubble's anti-tail observations created a significant public relations challenge for space agencies attempting to control the narrative surrounding 3-2 Atlas's anomalous characteristics. The democratization of astronomical observation meant that official attempts to classify unusual findings were increasingly futile, especially when determined amateurs could replicate professional results using consumer-grade equipment. The anti-tail phenomenon became the subject of intense analysis by researchers worldwide, who grappled with understanding how 3I, at last, could maintain such improbable dust configurations. Computer simulations indicated that sustaining an anti-tail structure would demand continuous energy expenditure and real-time force management at levels suggesting sophisticated technological systems. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford published a comprehensive analysis of the energy requirements for artificial tail control, painting a picture of technology operating beyond human comprehension. His calculations suggested that 3I Atlas was expending energy equivalent to that of small nuclear reactors merely to maintain its dust configuration against natural forces. The anti-tail structure represents an active engineering of the local space environment, Kim wrote in his technical assessment. Maintaining this configuration requires technology capable of simultaneously counteracting solar radiation pressure, gravitational influences, and electromagnetic effects, while preserving structural integrity across millions of cubic kilometers of space. The energy management implications were particularly disquieting when considered alongside previous observations of 3 Atlas's seemingly limitless technological capabilities. If the object could nonchalantly expend energy levels comparable to nuclear reactors solely for the creation of aesthetically pleasing dust formations, what might it achieve when deploying its full technological arsenal? Religious communities struggled to interpret the theological implications of an intelligence that appeared to manifest artistic expression through cosmic dust manipulation. Some leaders viewed the anti-tail structure as evidence of divine inspiration operating through alien intelligence, while others expressed concern about encountering minds capable of reshaping matter and energy according to aesthetic preferences. The notion of extraterrestrial creativity manifesting through intelligences beyond human grasp seemed to transcend any technological or theological frameworks, demanding instead a discourse on intelligence that demonstrated godlike power over natural forces. The anti-tail discovery also illuminated a troubling aspect of the information management efforts undertaken by governments and space agencies concerning 3I Atlas. The initial classification of Hubble's findings suggested that authorities were more preoccupied with public reaction and scientific accuracy, raising questions about what other observations might have been suppressed or delayed. Leaked communications between NASA administrators revealed intense internal debates regarding the extent of information that should be disseminated to the public concerning 3I Atlas's anomalous characteristics. While some officials advocated for complete transparency, others voiced concerns that revealing the full scope of the object's technological prowess might incite social instability or economic disruption. Vasquez, as the lead author of the foundational 3-2 Atlas research, found herself at the nexus of these debates about communication, caught between the imperative to either support institutional information management or champion complete scientific transparency. Scientists have a duty to share their findings with the broader community, but we also bear responsibilities to consider the implications of information that could provoke widespread alarm, Vasquez explained during one of her increasingly infrequent public appearances. The anti-tail phenomenon represents technology so advanced that public comprehension of its implications may be fundamentally unattainable. The anti-tail structure continued to evolve throughout the observation period, exhibiting increasing complexity and apparent functionality that suggested it was more than mere aesthetic display. Spectroscopic analysis revealed that different regions within the dust configuration comprised distinct materials, implying systematic organization rather than random ejection. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley published an analysis proposing that the anti-tail structure might function as a form of communication or data storage, rather than simple artistic expression. Her research indicated that the dust patterns contain mathematical relationships and geometric structures that appeared to encode complex information. The anti-tail configuration demonstrates organizational principles suggestive of informational content rather than random artistic arrangement, Santos wrote in her controversial analysis. We may be observing a form of communication that employs cosmic dust as a medium for transmitting complex data across interstellar distances. The interpretation of information encoding introduced new layers of mystery to the anti-tail phenomenon, while simultaneously raising uncomfortable questions about humanity's capacity to comprehend alien communication methods. If 3I Atlas was attempting to communicate through dust manipulation, human science lacked the requisite conceptual frameworks for deciphering such messages. Amateur radio operators monitoring 3I Atlas reported detecting electromagnetic emissions that appeared to correlate with shifts in the anti-tail structure. The signals suggested that the object was employing multiple communication modalities simultaneously, possibly attempting to engage different types of recipients through various technological approaches. The observed correlation between anti-tail modifications and radio emissions reinforced the interpretation that 3 Atlas was actively managing its environment for purposes beyond simple navigation or scientific observation, appearing to conduct complex operations serving multiple functions concurrently. The anti-tail phenomenon also provided insights into 3 Atlas's awareness of human observation. The structure grew more intricate and visually striking as human telescopes achieved greater resolution, suggesting the object was modifying its displays in response to improved observational technology. This responsiveness to human capabilities raised unsettling questions about how long 3 Outlaws might have been observing human technological development. If the object was adapting its behavior based on human observation capabilities, it could have been studying terrestrial technology long before its official discovery. Intelligence agencies worldwide found themselves analyzing artistic displays as potential intelligence data, a scenario for which no training had prepared them. The anti-tail structure was subjected to scrutiny by cryptographic specialists, military analysts, and behavioral psychologists, all attempting to extract strategic information from what appeared to be cosmic art. The Defense Intelligence Agency had discreetly established a dedicated task force to interpret the anti-tail phenomenon from the perspective of information warfare and psychological operations. Their classified analysis posited that 3-2 at last might be employing aesthetic manipulation to showcase technological superiority while simultaneously testing human responses. Colonel Sarah Martinez, who led the military's 3 Atlas assessment team, found herself authoring reports that bore more resemblance to art criticism than threat analysis. The anti-tail structure demonstrates precise control over matter and energy at scales that vastly exceed our defensive capabilities, she wrote in her classified assessment. Whether this constitutes intimidation, communication, or simple artistic expression, the underlying technological implications are identical from a security standpoint. The military's interpretation of the anti-tail as potential psychological warfare lent added urgency to efforts to comprehend its purpose and meaning. If 3I Atlas was deliberately attempting to influence human perception and behavior through demonstrations of technological supremacy, then the object represented a form of attack for which human defenses were entirely unprepared. At MIT, Dr. Lisa Park embarked on a rigorous engineering examination of the extraordinary anti-tail formation. Her objective was to deconstruct the intricate technologies that would be indispensable for constructing and sustaining such seemingly unattainable configurations. Her findings painted a vivid tableau of capabilities that bordered on the manipulation of fundamental physical laws. The creation of an anti-tail structure necessitates the instantaneous modulation of electromagnetic fields, gravitational forces, and particle interactions across vast expanses of space, potentially spanning millions of cubic kilometers. Park meticulously detailed in her technical report, the sheer magnitude of computational power required suggests information processing capacities that dwarf human technological achievements by unfathomable degrees. The computational analysis consequently ignited further inquiries into the advanced information processing architecture of the entity designated 3 Atlas. If this object possessed the capacity to execute the real-time calculations vital for maintaining its anti-tail structure while simultaneously engaging in reconnaissance, communication, and navigation, its computing prowess would unquestionably surpass human capabilities by astronomical margins. Concurrently, amateur astronomers, leveraging collaborative networks, commenced their own meticulous analysis of the anti-tail formation. This decentralized approach allowed them to discern subtle shifts and patterns that might elude the scrutiny of professional institutions. The widespread accessibility of research pertaining to 3I Atlas catalyzed a global citizen science initiative, frequently yielding insights that stood shoulder to shoulder with official investigations. Marcus Rodriguez, proprietor of the Arizona Observatory, which had transformed into a central hub for amateur research endeavors, unveiled time-lapse imagery vividly illustrating the anti-tail structure's real-time evolution. His footage unequivocally demonstrated the dust configuration's continuous self-adjustment, meticulously preserving precise geometric relationships despite the tumultuous environmental forces of the solar system. "We are witnessing the active engineering of space itself," Rodriguez declared in his analytical video presentations, which consistently captivated millions of viewers. This transcends mere dust management. It represents environmental control on a scale that renders human terraforming projects utterly insignificant in comparison. The instantaneous nature of the anti-tail adjustments provided compelling supplementary evidence of 3 Atlas's response capabilities, vastly exceeding those of human technological systems. The entity was exhibiting a sophisticated artificial intelligence, capable of processing environmental changes and recalibrating its operations at speeds exceeding the measurement capabilities of human instrumentation. Across the globe, philosophical circles began to grapple with the profound implications of an intelligence that utilized cosmic dust as an artistic medium. The anti-tail structure emerged as a novel form of expression operating on scales of space and time that utterly dwarfed human artistic traditions. This compelled a fundamental re-evaluation of long-held assumptions concerning creativity, intelligence, and aesthetic appreciation. Dr. Amanda Foster, a distinguished philosopher of science at Oxford University, specializing in the intricacies of extraterrestrial intelligence, published a seminal paper scrutinizing the anti-tail phenomenon through the lens of xenoaesthetics. Her analysis posited that human attempts to interpret alien art were inherently destined for failure, without a vastly improved understanding of how non-human minds might perceive beauty and significance. "We are confronting artistic expression that adheres to aesthetic principles entirely beyond our grasp," Foster articulated in her philosophical treatise. The anti-tail structure may embody forms of beauty that necessitate distinct modes of consciousness for full appreciation. Our efforts at interpretation might prove as futile as expecting a canine to critique human poetry. This philosophical perspective injected a much-needed element of humility into scientific endeavors to comprehend 3I Atlas, while simultaneously illuminating the immense lacunae in human knowledge concerning intelligence, consciousness, and aesthetic discernment. If the anti-tail indeed represented alien artistry, humanity might be witnessing masterpieces to which they were cognitively incapable of accessing. Furthermore, the anti-tail structure became a magnet for conspiracy theories, intricately weaving together legitimate scientific concerns with outlandish speculation regarding alien intentions and clandestine governmental cover-ups. These discussions often blended accurate technical analysis with increasingly sensational theories of mind control, dimensional manipulation, and cosmic warfare. The rampant proliferation of conspiracy theories was exacerbated by the fact that the anti-tail phenomenon demonstrably defied established physics in ways that appeared almost supernatural. When established scientific principles encountered seemingly impossible events, the distinction between evidence-based analysis and speculative conjecture became increasingly blurred for the general public. Educational institutions found themselves compelled to develop novel curricula to equip students with the tools to understand the 3EY Atlas phenomenon, while simultaneously cultivating critical thinking skills essential for navigating information that challenged foundational assumptions about reality. The anti-tail structure was thus employed as a case study, illustrating the methodology for analyzing anomalous data without abandoning rigorous scientific principles. Dr. Robert Chun, affiliated with Caltech, who had been investigating the energy demands associated with anti-tail maintenance, released follow-up research delving into the thermodynamic implications of the dust manipulation. His analysis suggested that 3I Atlas was somehow tapping into energy sources operating outside the purview of conventional physics. The anti-tail structure represents a violation of thermodynamic principles that should render its maintenance impossible, Chun asserted in his increasingly philosophical analysis. Either our comprehension of energy conservation is fundamentally incomplete, or we are observing technology that operates according to physical laws yet to be discovered. The thermodynamic discrepancies implied by the anti-tail structure contributed to the burgeoning list of ways in which 3 Atlas challenged humanity's understanding of natural law. The object was demonstrably exhibiting capabilities that appeared to disregard the conservation of energy, conservation of momentum, and other fundamental principles underpinning human physics. medical professionals began documenting an escalating incidence of anxiety and depression among individuals closely monitoring the developments surrounding 3EY Atlas. The anti-tail phenomenon, in particular, seemed to precipitate existential crises, as individuals grappled with evidence suggesting their foundational understanding of reality was fundamentally flawed. Mental health support groups dedicated to addressing 3IA Atlas-related anxiety emerged in major metropolitan centers globally, offering counsel to those struggling to cope with the implications of confirmed extraterrestrial technology. The anti-tail structure proved to be a particularly potent trigger for individuals who found the confluence of beauty and impossibility psychologically overwhelming. The aesthetic impact of the anti-tail structure spurred artistic communities worldwide to undertake terrestrial interpretations of cosmic engineering. Sculptors, painters, and digital artists commenced the creation of works aimed at capturing the visual and emotional resonance of witnessing impossible beauty, fashioned through technological means that surpassed human comprehension. While some artistic interpretations focused on the geometric exactitude of the anti-tail structure, others emphasized the profound intelligence capable of manipulating cosmic forces for aesthetic ends. This artistic response mirrored humanity's endeavor to process experiences for which their evolutionary history had not adequately prepared them. The Hubble deception had thus evolved from a mere technical anomaly into a comprehensive challenge to humanity's understanding of intelligence, technology, aesthetics, and reality itself. The anti-tail structure stood as tangible evidence that 3I Atlas operated according to principles that transcended every framework humanity had developed for comprehending the cosmos. As October advanced and 3I Atlas continued its trajectory towards solar conjunction, the anti-tail structure persisted in its evolution, suggesting preparations for activities anticipated during its obscured period behind the sun. The object appeared to be utilizing its final weeks of visibility to impart a message through cosmic artistry that humanity was still endeavoring to decipher, while simultaneously showcasing technological prowess that rendered human achievements utterly primitive by comparison. Chapter 11. December Deadline, the Final Countdown. November 21st, 2025, arrived with an intensity that seemed to permeate the collective consciousness of humankind. According to Avi's calculations, this date signified the commencement of the window during which any probes deployed by 3 Atlas during its solar passage might begin their arrival at Earth. For the first time in recorded history, humanity observed a calendar date that held the potential to represent either the most wondrous or the most terrifying moment in the existence of their species. Dr. Sarah Kim, based at Caltech, had endured weeks of sleepless nights as the deadline loomed. This was not due to an inherent belief in the inevitability of extraterrestrial contact, but rather because the mathematical precision of Loeb's scenario rendered its dismissal impossible. The orbital mechanics are unforgiving, she explained during the now daily briefings for government officials who were struggling to devise strategies for scenarios for which no contingency manual existed. If 3IA Atlas did deploy reconnaissance probes during its solar passage, the laws of physics dictate that they would begin arriving in Earth's vicinity within the subsequent 2 weeks. The psychological ramifications of a specific deadline for potential first contact had profoundly altered human society in ways that social scientists were finding difficult to meticulously document. Stock markets experienced unprecedented fluctuations as investors attempted to factor in scenarios ranging from technological revolution to the extinction of the species. Religious communities organized ceaseless prayer vigils, while secular institutions prepared for possibilities that challenged every fundamental assumption about humanity's place in the universe. Amateur astronomers worldwide orchestrated the most comprehensive celestial monitoring effort in history, with thousands of observers coordinating their searches for any objects that might signify incoming probes from 3 Atlas. The Citizen Science Network, spearheaded by Marcus Rodriguez, had evolved into a global early warning system, frequently detecting astronomical phenomena before professional institutions could mount a response. We have become humanity's eyes and ears for the most critical 2 weeks in our species' history, Rodriguez stated in his video broadcasts, which consistently attracted an audience exceeding 20 million viewers. Every amateur telescope on Earth is now an integral part of a detection network that could provide the initial warning of approaching alien technology. The December deadline had also instigated the most significant mobilization of space surveillance assets since the zenith of the Cold War. Military tracking networks, typically employed for monitoring satellite threats and debris, were reconfigured to detect minute objects approaching from interplanetary space. The detection challenge was immense, given that any probes emanating from 3 Atlas would likely be considerably smaller and far more advanced than anything human tracking systems were designed to identify. Herself was coordinating an observational campaign that harnessed the capabilities of every major telescope, both terrestrial and orbital. "We are undertaking the most intensive search for artificial objects ever attempted," she declared during a technical briefing disseminated to observatories worldwide. "If alien probes are indeed approaching Earth, we will detect them before they reach our immediate vicinity." However, these detection efforts were complicated by an inherent uncertainty regarding precisely what they should be seeking. Human spacecraft, by contrast, were relatively large, crude constructs that generated discernible signatures detectable by conventional tracking methodologies. Alien probes, if they existed, might possess the ability to remain undetected due to their diminutive size, while simultaneously wielding technological capabilities that could render human surveillance systems utterly ineffective. Activated protocols that had previously existed solely as theoretical exercises mere months prior. The prospect of alien technology operating in Earth's vicinity in the near future propelled national security planning into uncharted territory, a domain that no preceding generation of military strategists had ever been required to contemplate. The European Space Agency had discreetly repositioned several of its monitoring satellites to optimize coverage of potential approach vectors identified by Loeb's analysis as most probable for incoming probes. Dr. Angela Martinez, overseeing the ESA's contribution to the detection initiative, found herself managing resources originally conceived for routine space science, now serving as humanity's primary defense against the unknown. "We are attempting to detect objects that may be smaller than automobiles, traveling at interplanetary velocities, using technology that surpasses our understanding by potentially centuries," Martinez explained during a classified briefing attended by defense officials from numerous nations. "Our detection capabilities may prove fundamentally insufficient for the monumental challenge we face." The technological disparity raised critical questions regarding humanity's ability to respond effectively, even if incoming probes were successfully detected. Conventional notions of interception, deterrence, or defense became largely irrelevant when confronted with technology capable of manipulating fundamental forces and operating according to physical principles beyond the scope of current human scientific comprehension. Dr. Robert Kim, based at Stanford, had been meticulously analyzing the strategic implications of the December deadline from the dual perspectives of game theory and military planning. His assessments outlined scenarios that challenged every established assumption regarding conflict and cooperation between civilizations possessing vastly divergent technological levels. "We are potentially confronting an intelligence that operates on timescales measured in millions of years, while wielding technology that approaches omnipotence," Kim stated in his strategic analysis, which was immediately classified upon completion. Traditional concepts of negotiation, deterrence, and defense may be rendered entirely obsolete when dealing with such profound differences in capability and perspective. The religious community's reaction to the December deadline was marked by both intensity and diversity. Certain leaders interpreted the approaching date as a harbinger of divine revelation, poised to fundamentally transform humanity's understanding of creation and purpose. Others expressed profound concern regarding the spiritual implications of encountering an intelligence that might challenge foundational doctrines concerning human uniqueness and divine authority. The Vatican issued a series of pronouncements designed to prepare the global Catholic populace for possibilities that traditional theology had never seriously entertained. Pope Francis underscored that divine love extended to all of creation, irrespective of its origin or technological sophistication, while acknowledging that contact with non-terrestrial intelligence would necessitate careful theological deliberation and potentially the formulation of new doctrinal frameworks. Other religious organizations devised their own unique approaches to the imminent prospect of contact, ranging from fervent anticipation of cosmic revelation to deep-seated apprehension about challenges to established spiritual paradigms. This spectrum of religious responses reflected the fundamental uncertainty surrounding the potential meaning of alien contact for human conceptions of the sacred and the divine. Educational institutions found themselves compelled to prepare students for a future that might be fundamentally unlike anything previously imagined. The December deadline forced educators to confront the challenge of maintaining academic programs and career preparation initiatives when the very bedrock assumptions of human technological advancement might soon become obsolete. Dr. Maria Santos, affiliated with UC Berkeley, developed curricula specifically designed to assist students in comprehending the ramifications of technological contact while simultaneously fostering critical thinking skills and psychological resilience. Her programs prioritized adaptability and cognitive flexibility over specific technical knowledge, which risked becoming irrelevant overnight. We are preparing students for a future that we cannot predict or even fully imagine, Santos articulated during an educational conference convened to address contact preparedness. The skills we can impart are fundamentally psychological and intellectual, rather than technical, focusing on how to navigate unprecedented change rather than on specific knowledge that may soon be superseded. The December deadline had also spurred an unprecedented level of cooperation among nations that had historically been rivals or maintained adversarial relationships. The sheer magnitude of potential alien contact compelled traditional adversaries to collaborate in ways that decades of diplomatic effort had failed to achieve. China's National Space Administration shared surveillance data and detection capabilities with Western agencies in a manner that would have been inconceivable during previous periods of international tension. Russian space assets were coordinated with NATO surveillance systems for the first time since the dissolution of the Cold War. The prospect of alien contact had fostered a temporary unity of purpose that transcended terrestrial political divisions. However, this international cooperation was hampered by uncertainty regarding the appropriate response should contact actually occur. No established international frameworks existed for managing alien contact, and the urgency dictated by the December deadline precluded the development of comprehensive protocols for cooperation versus competition in such unprecedented scenarios. The artificial intelligence behind 3 Atlas found herself at the epicenter of debates concerning contact protocols and response strategies. Her scientific analyses had precipitated a global crisis that was now approaching its potential climax, thrusting her into responsibilities she had neither sought nor anticipated. The scientific community has opened a door that we may not be able to close, Vasquez admitted during one of her infrequent public appearances. The December deadline compels us to confront possibilities that we identified through research, but are not prepared to manage as a civilization. Amateur radio operators reported increased activity within frequency ranges previously exhibiting only background noise, suggesting that something might indeed be approaching Earth within the predicted timeframe. The signals were too faint and ambiguous for definitive analysis, but their temporal alignment with Loeb's deployment scenarios made their dismissal difficult. These radio observations were being meticulously analyzed by teams of specialists endeavoring to differentiate between natural phenomena, human-generated interference, and potentially artificial signals indicative of approaching alien technology. The task was formidable, given the weak nature of the signals and the absence of prior experience with extraterrestrial communication protocols. Social media platforms experienced an unprecedented surge in activity as the December deadline approached, with billions of individuals worldwide sharing theories, expressing fears, and discussing preparations for what might transpire during the contact window. The psychological impact of a specific timeline for potentially species-defining events had engendered a form of collective anxiety that mental health professionals found challenging to manage. Online communities dedicated to 3i Atlas tracking grew to encompass hundreds of millions of participants, diligently following every development in real time. The democratization of information concerning the December deadline had fostered a global dialogue on human preparedness and response to cosmic contact, operating entirely outside traditional institutional channels. The December deadline represented far more than a mere date on the calendar. It had become a pivotal nexus for humanity's hopes, apprehensions, and fundamental assumptions regarding their place within the universe. The anticipation of extraterrestrial probes, whether they actually materialized as Loeb had foreseen or not, had already profoundly reshaped human civilization. This collective expectation of contact had initiated changes that would endure, irrespective of the ultimate outcome. As November yielded to December, and the window for potential communication expanded, observatories worldwide maintained their diligent watch. Humanity, collectively holding its breath, awaited revelations that could either redefine everything or confirm our solitary existence within a vast, silent cosmos. Chapter 12. The Verdict, a Natural Marvel or Extraterrestrial Arrival. December 5, 2025, marked the conclusion of AVI's forecasted arrival period for probes potentially launched by the object-designated 3i Atlas during its clandestine transit behind the Sun. As the final moments of the contact deadline dwindled, humanity found itself in a singular position, collectively pausing in expectation of disclosures that might never materialize, or perhaps might arrive in forms too subtle for immediate comprehension. Dr. Sarah Kim, stationed at Caltech, had spent 2 weeks monitoring detection arrays around the clock. She had been collaborating with observatories, military tracking facilities, and independent skywatchers globally, engaging in what had become the most concentrated endeavor ever undertaken to locate artificial celestial bodies. With the deadline approaching without any overt signs of contact, she found herself grappling with questions that extended far beyond mere astronomical observation. The absence of a dramatic encounter doesn't necessarily equate to the absence of any encounter, Kim stated at a press conference, scheduled regardless of the deadline's revelations. We have been searching for alien technology using our own detection methods and our own assumptions about how such technology might behave. Our inability to detect obvious artificial objects might reflect the limitations of our search capabilities rather than a lack of alien presence. Humanity was compelled to confront the possibility that initial contact might not unfold according to human expectations or timelines. The sophisticated intelligence behind 3i Atlas might operate under principles that rendered human concepts of arrival, contact, and communication entirely inadequate for understanding the unfolding events. Amateur radio operators had registered faint alterations in ambient electromagnetic patterns during the final days of the contact window. However, these signals were too faint and ambiguous to definitively indicate an artificial origin. While the observations suggested that something might indeed be transpiring in Earth's proximity, it was occurring at a level of subtlety that surpassed humanity's capacity for conclusive identification and analysis. Marcus Rodriguez, spearheading citizen science initiatives from his Arizona center, found himself documenting what could be the most anticlimactic, yet potentially significant, non-event in human history. We may be witnessing contact that operates according to alien rather than human definitions of communication and interaction, he explained in his final deadline analysis video. The silence itself may hold more significance than any dramatic arrival we might have anticipated. The nuanced nature of potential contact posed profound questions about human perceptual and cognitive limitations when faced with intelligences operating under fundamentally different principles. 3i Atlas had already exhibited technology that defied human understanding of physical laws. Any communication methods it employed might be equally beyond human comprehension and analysis. He was examining the psychological and sociological ramifications of the deadline's passage, irrespective of whether actual contact had occurred. His research indicated that the collective experience of anticipating alien arrival had already transformed human society, regardless of the eventual outcome. The December deadline has served as a mirror, reflecting humanity's assumptions about intelligence, technology, and cosmic contact, Kim wrote in her post-deadline analysis. Whether or not alien probes actually arrived, the process of preparing for such contact has illuminated fundamental aspects of human psychology and social organization that we had never been compelled to scrutinize. The passing of the deadline ignited fervent debate within the scientific community regarding the interpretation of the absence of overt contact. Some researchers asserted that the lack of a dramatic arrival confirmed 3i Atlas as a natural phenomenon whose unusual characteristics could eventually be explained by conventional scientific principles. Others maintained that the deadline represented merely one potential scenario among many, and that contact might occur via timelines and methods that human analysis had not foreseen. Dr. Evelyn Reed, whose trajectory analysis had initiated the entire 3i Atlas investigation, found herself in the challenging position of defending research that had predicted events that had not transpired in their expected forms. Science progresses through hypothesis testing, even when the results challenge our predictions, she stated during the post-deadline scientific review. The absence of contact according to one specific scenario does not invalidate the evidence that 3i Atlas represents artificial intelligence. International space agencies continued their heightened surveillance operations beyond the original deadline. Acknowledging that extraterrestrial contact might not adhere to human expectations, the detection networks established for the December window would continue functioning indefinitely, transitioning from a temporary crisis response to permanent monitoring systems for potential alien activity. Religious communities worldwide interpreted the deadline's passage through the lens of their diverse theological frameworks. Some leaders viewed the absence of dramatic contact as confirmation of divine authority's supremacy over any alien intelligence. Others posited that contact might be occurring through spiritual rather than technological channels, imperceptible to human institutions. The Vatican issued a statement acknowledging that divine plans operate on timelines that transcend human comprehension, while underscoring that the pursuit of truth through scientific investigation remains a sacred duty, irrespective of immediate results. Other religious organizations developed their own interpretations of events that had simultaneously fulfilled and thwarted human expectations. Educational institutions found themselves re-evaluating curricula designed to prepare students for post-contact scenarios that had not materialized as anticipated. This experience underscored the significance of intellectual agility and adaptive thinking when confronted with unprecedented situations that challenged established frameworks for understanding reality. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley documented the impact of the December deadline experience on student psychology and academic planning. Her research revealed that the prospect of imminent technological revolution had motivated many students to prioritize adaptability and critical thinking over specialized technical skills that could quickly become obsolete. The 3I Atlas crisis has taught us that the most valuable educational preparation for an uncertain future lies in cognitive flexibility rather than specific knowledge, Santos explained in her post-deadline analysis. Students who learn to think adaptively about unprecedented challenges will be better equipped for whatever the future may bring. The business and financial sectors experienced the deadline's passage as a period of profound uncertainty, followed by a sense of cautious relief that economic systems would continue operating under familiar paradigms. Nevertheless, the volatility and psychological impact of the crisis exposed vulnerabilities in global economic structures that had never been tested by scenarios involving potential technological revolution. Stock markets experienced dramatic fluctuations as investors attempted to gauge the implications, ranging from technological utopia to economic collapse, ultimately settling into patterns that reflected ongoing uncertainty regarding 3I Atlas's true nature and significance. This experience highlighted the unpreparedness of human economic systems for managing rapid technological shifts that might accompany alien contact. Amateur astronomers continued their enhanced observation efforts beyond the official deadline, recognizing that their citizen science networks had become an indispensable element of humanity's capacity to monitor cosmic developments. The democratization of 3I Atlas research had fostered capabilities that would persist irrespective of immediate contact outcomes. The amateur community also began developing novel methodologies for detecting subtle phenomena that might indicate alien activity operating below the threshold of conventional detection systems. These efforts acknowledged that advanced alien technology might be engineered to evade obvious detection while still conducting reconnaissance or other operations in Earth's vicinity. Intelligence agencies worldwide utilized the December deadline as a test of their capabilities for managing unprecedented technological threats and information warfare scenarios. The experience revealed both strengths and weaknesses in systems designed for terrestrial security challenges rather than cosmic ones. The 3I Atlas crisis compelled intelligence organizations to develop new frameworks for analyzing threats that operated according to principles beyond human technological understanding. These analytical capacities would remain relevant regardless of whether the immediate contact predictions proved accurate. Mental health professionals documented significant psychological impacts stemming from the deadline experience, ranging from acute anxiety during the waiting period to various forms of relief, disappointment, or persistent uncertainty after the deadline passed without obvious contact. This experience offered unparalleled insights into how human psychology reacts to existential uncertainty on cosmic scales. Support networks established to assist individuals coping with contact anxiety evolved into communities focused on processing the broader implications of inhabiting a universe that clearly contained intelligences far exceeding human capacity. The psychological adaptation to cosmic uncertainty became an ongoing process rather than a crisis to be resolved. The passage of the deadline also spurred renewed analysis of 3I Atlas itself, which was expected to emerge from behind the Sun in early December, becoming visible again to Earth-based telescopes. The object's reappearance would offer the first opportunity since October to ascertain whether it had been altered during its obscured transit or had deployed any secondary craft. Preliminary observations of 3I Atlas as it began to emerge from solar conjunction indicated that the object had indeed undergone alterations during its hidden period. New structural features were discernible, and the electromagnetic emissions detected by radio telescopes exhibited greater complexity and organization compared to pre-conjunction observations. The modifications to 3I Atlas during its concealed passage provided evidence that the objects had been actively engaged in operations while unobservable from Earth. Whether these operations involved probe deployment, system upgrades, or other activities remained unclear, but the changes confirmed that 3I Atlas represented active technology rather than passive natural phenomena. Dr. Reed found herself coordinating renewed observation campaigns designed to document whatever 3i Atlas might reveal about its activities during the solar passage. We are about to get our first glimpse of what this object accomplished during 6 weeks of complete operational privacy, she explained during the observation planning briefing. The changes we observe will provide critical insights into its capabilities and objectives. The verdict on 3i Atlas remained fundamentally inconclusive, despite months of intensive investigation and the passing of predicted contact deadlines. The object unequivocally represented something unprecedented in human experience, exhibiting capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about technology, intelligence, and natural law. Whether it heralded alien contact or simply represented phenomena yet to be understood by human science remained an open question that would continue to shape human civilization, regardless of immediate answers.